Hey everyone, it's Mir, and I'm back again with Jarkey Bacon.
Me! We're back at it again. Round 2, baby.
Round 2, we're talking about Planet S Volume 2. This is going to be chapters, 6 through 11 this time. So, I guess we could start with just overall thoughts about the volume. I really liked this volume, I think, more than the first one. I think the first chapter of last volume is still probably my favorite chapter, but I felt like this one, I don't know, like it feels like the story is kind of not as all over the place as it was before, and it feels like it's very, very focused now, and I really like it.
Yeah, no, it's a lot more, like, tied together. There's a greater through line, like, the plot's going, it's not episodic individual chapters that feel quite different and succinct. It feels like everything's leading into the next thing. The plotting's generally a lot more cohesive.
Yeah, exactly. And I really like the direction it's taking too. There's a lot of interesting things that I'll have to talk more about it when we actually get to them. But I feel like thematically it's starting to really feel like Yukimura, and there's just a lot going on there that you can feel the kind of core beliefs that he has in these chapters that like you see in Vinland Saga, and I really like how it's come together. There's just so many really good moments. But yeah, let's just start. Actually, before we start, one thing that we talked about in the beginning of the last video was how to pronounce Planet S, and right after I had posted the video, like an hour or two after, my dad sends me a text message, and he never like watches my videos or anything, but apparently he saw me post this one because he found an interview where Yukimura actually pronounced it, and it is Planet S. It was in that Isayama interview that he did very recently. Yeah, I only read that interview. I never actually like watched it and heard it. So apparently he pronounced it right there. I don't know how my dad found that, but shout outs to Dad.
Papa Mia coming through, baby. Let's go.
For coming through. Yeah, so it is Planet S, so we're sticking with that, and no one can tell me otherwise.
Yeah.
But, all right, want to get started with Chapter 6?
Yeah, I think Chapter 6, let me just flick through it real quick, and let me just make it absolutely clear. I had a quick look online at some of the scanlations, and the art is just so much better in the actual books. It's unreal.
It's insane.
I really wanted to be like, I really want to color these pages, and I'm thinking I'm gonna have to just photo scan it myself because it is just impossible. But to give like an overarching thought, I wrote the most about this one, this probably chapter individually, and I think everything kind of flows from it, like in a plot wise, but also in a thematic way. But we're introduced to Hachi's father, which has been a bit of a misnomer at this point, as we always know, at least from Vinland Saga. And I feel like I'm going to be talking maybe a bit more about Vinland Saga in this one.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I know we said we didn't want to, but like this is the same author. This is what he's most well known for, and we do want to like take Planet S as its own thing, but also how it contributes to Yukimura's overall body of work. I think is actually another really interesting thing to talk about. Sure. I mean, I had like a video idea. I mean, like anyway, I'm sure we'll get to this later. But anyway, yeah, we were introduced to the father, Goro. Sorry,
Goro. Yes,
Goro. I think that's what we'll probably call him. He has a longer name. Most of these characters have longer names, but I just take the shorter names because I can never remember them easier. And it almost feels like if Askeladd was a drunken kind of like a bit of a deplorable father figure, in terms of like Askeladd is very well put together. Goro's not, but this dynamic's very similar to like the Askeladd Thorfinn prologue.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, it's like if Askeladd actually was his father.
Yeah, and it's definitely much more amicable. Like it's clearly much more there. Like it's clearly in Vinland Saga a lot more strongly like high strung, and they clearly hate each other a lot more. Here, it's like the stakes are less high, but
Yeah.
You know, he's super haphazard, but also incredibly charming. Like his gestures, like of him like picking his ear with his pinky. I've never done that in real life, but I saw Bug Eyes do it once, and Goro does it here, and I absolutely love it. It's incredible.
Yeah, on that same page where we have like him like kind of laid back with his hands in his pockets.
Yeah,
providing power for the human race. That's some heavy shit. Like that just screamed Ascalon to me. Like,
yeah,
I'm focused on me, like my mission. That whole idea is so core to this whole volume.
Yeah,
I think that's really what actually makes this volume so much stronger for me, is that like the same idea is explored the whole way through, and it really is a Hachi focused volume about his kind of progression in how he's approaching this mission and how he's thinking about it. And
yeah,
Goro is like essentially, well, him and Locksmith are both here to sort of show the path that Hachi's kind of on his way down. And I think the introduction of both of these characters is brilliant.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because Goro and Locksmith they both thematically mean the same idea, but because they're two different characters, they give different shapes to that idea. Like Locksmith seems super clinical, super like almost unemotional about these things,
right?
Almost a lot more terrifying and a lot less like, and maybe he's just a more extreme, but Goro is like, I mean, there is a slight nuance in their thematic point later on, but Goro is, gives a much more charming and personality to it, and be like, okay, someone like this could also still be incredibly selfish and focus on their dreams, which is kind of what they both kind of focus on, and maybe I feel like I can't talk about this chapter without being like, the whole point about this story so far feels like. And like particularly like this last volume basically is about like the dreams and dreams being inherently selfish, and wrestling with that, and yes. It is, and in a meta way, like Yukimura writes from the heart, and so like I've written down this quote that I think I sent you, but like I've written it down again, and we can talk about it later, of Yukimura actually talking about it himself, and I think it actually applies to himself very well. And when Yukimura also writes from things that he's experienced at his time in life, like when he's becoming a father. This is when Vinland Saga gets all this father, a big dose of fatherhood, themes. And here I think he's, as a young man learning his way in life, kind of wrestling with a few things, and I think that actually leads into Tanabe and a few other things later on, which I have my suspicions, I guess. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I guess now we kind of introduced Goro and Locksmith. I mean, let me kind of go a bit more in on Locksmith, I guess, because we kind of mentioned him as an aside, but Locksmith is the leader of this Jupiter project, and he's the one who is kind of taking it as his own dream, his own like selfish dream, and he's just focused only on achieving that dream, no matter what's getting stepped on in the process. And this kind of is shown with the accident at the lab where the engine explodes, and when he's like addressing the public, he's not apologizing like he should be. He's not really caring about public opinion. He's saying like, yeah, we'll compensate the families, but like we're going to get data from this and we're going to find the problem. So we're going to keep going. And that's it. And I really like the moment where this happens, because you have Goro, who was like, I don't really care about the mission. I don't really want to be on it. But then he sees this selfish bastard say like, no, I don't care. Like, we're going to keep going. And he's like, okay, that's a man who's going to get the job done. Like, and this sort of inspires him to take on the mission, because he sees like it's not like what Hachi was saying, because Hachi's going all in about how this is for the sake of mankind, and like we are going to provide energy to mankind for the next century. And Goro's like, I don't really care about that. But then you have Locksmith who's like, no, we're doing it because I want to, and that's it. It's my dream to do it, and I'm gonna do it. And Goro's like, that's a man I can get behind. Yeah,
that's hilarious. Particularly, I think, and later on this will get expanded on, but like the fact that he's calling his wife, I forget her name now. I should have written it down. The mother.
Yeah, me too.
Hang on, I'm gonna look back. I think the thing is they just call her mum so many of the times that like I kind of forget. But this has a big like, I mean, Goro's relationship here does set up a lot of things here, and you only realize once you reread it, like, this is exactly what Hachi's going to go through in the rest of this arc we're talking about. Oh, I guess volume. What is it? Haruko. There you go. Haruko.
Yes, I do remember reading that.
And I just wanted to continue on with Locksmith. I think the key thing here is that Locksmith is, I mean, clearly being a parallel to the scientist named later on who created the V2 rocket, which was a Nazi scientist, von Braun, which is basically, for the people who don't know, and I actually educated myself on this. I didn't know, like, you're like, I knew about that. Nazi scientists were used in the American, space exploration, but I didn't actually know the names of any of the people. And so the V2 rocket is basically, for those who don't know, I mean, in the UK we learn about it because the V2 rocket landed on I want to say Birmingham, basically one of our cities, and actually blew it to smithereens. It's not like an atomic bomb, but it's a big old rocket-launched missile that came all the way from Germany and landed in the UK, basically. They had the V1 as well. Maybe that was the UK as well. I wouldn't be surprised because it was probably late in the war when the UK was the main Allied stronghold in World War II. Anyway, aside. But it's kind of... how Goro describes them is super interesting. I think this is where Locksmith kind of goes different to Goro. Locksmith, and so what? Actually, no, this is a different scientist. Sorry.
Oh yeah,
I'm getting all of them.
The other one that Hachi
there's a Russian
quotes.
one. Yeah, the one that Hachi quotes, which is Solovskovsky. I can't say his name, but he's anyway. How Goro described, so this quote Hachi uses from this guy is the earth is the cradle of mankind, but mankind cannot stay in the cradle forever.
Yep.
And then Goro describes this man as a mad scientist who decided to make his personal dream a goal of all mankind. It was a brilliant idea. I came to the stars because I always dreamed of doing it. This is Goro speaking about himself. Now I've done it. That's it. But I respect selfish dreamers. Without them, space would still be a mystery. Much of space would still be a mystery. And it's this idea of like, maybe Goro, as you say, gets inspired by these people, but he's not someone that would be like, okay, I want this so bad that I'm willing to risk massive amounts of humanity for it.
We do
and this
see
is
that
shown
more later too.
Yeah.
Where he has more hesitation than even Hachi. And I thought that was really intriguing. That even though he kind of seems to agree with Locksmith in a lot of ways, it's not that he agrees with all of it. And that's a good thing to bring up. They're not in any way the same, but they both are these like selfish dreamers. Yeah. And what's so important about that is that this sort of volume is the like direct follow-up to what we got in Chapter 5, where Hachi kind of changed his perspective and changed his drive to something different. And it kind of seemed like a positive thing in that chapter to me, but then I remember you mentioned at the end like the kind of ominous image of Hachi after Chapter 5 ends, and this volume is all about that. It is all about why Hachi's approach to solving his fear of like isolation there is not the right way to go. Like, even though yes, he's kind of solved that problem, he's given up a lot of himself for it. Yeah,
for sure. And interestingly, Locksmith is called Wagner or something like that. Werner Locksmith. And it's the same first name as von Braun. So that's another very clear parallel between them.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
So Locksmith is this kind of archetypical mad scientist that would do anything. He, like, these people explode, as you say earlier, and he's like, hey, this is class rule. We'll just use these lives as data. He's just not being empathetic. Like, of course, like, he doesn't want, but it's almost he's saying is like, I'm not wanting to fix this flaw because I don't want less humans to die. He wants less humans to die because it will just help his mission succeed. That's why he wants to fix the problem.
Exactly.
And it's very much like, at whatever cost, we shall achieve our dreams. And and push beyond,
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with, like, say, the US. It's like, we don't care if you're Nazi, we don't care if you used to be. You're a great rocket scientist, and we want you to. I mean, you're literally the father of rocket science, right? We are going to use you. You're going to do your thing, and you're going to get us to space. That's what we care about. And it's kind of like making a slight commentary on that, that ethical dilemma there, which is interesting.
Yep. And I just really like how this chapter sort of serves to call out Hachi a little bit, because he starts it with, like, talking about how this is going to help mankind and how they need to be on this mission to help mankind. But by the end of it, he's realizing, no, I am just like them. I'm doing this because I want to. And that just sets the tone for the rest of the volume, really, for how he is just kind of isolated in his dream.
Yeah, and I think he this is where he's most sympathetic about it. Later on, he becomes pretty brassy, pretty frustrating about it, almost to an extreme. And I think, I mean, I'm sure I'll comment on a few of these things later on, but yeah, I think this manga is very quick to change emotion very quickly. Like it is, but almost faster. So, like, there is very little room to breathe, and I think it's almost at a fault. If I was going to, like, make any complaints, really, it's the pacing. I wish he just drew it out a bit longer. People talk about, like, there's just a few times when, like, turning pages, I'm like, wow, this feels like it's going so quickly. And I understand, Yukimura is new to this thing. He's spending, like, 2 months on each chapter. Like, he's not thinking, I really want to add in another chapter that is full of a bit more fluff in it, just so people can get to. He's almost so streamlined that it leaves you with little room to breathe. But that's like my greatest criticism of this manga so far, and it hasn't actually really diminished it, because it just means I lose a lot of little details, I feel like. But at the end of the day, I'm still really enjoying it.
I definitely agree. The pacing. It definitely can be a bit weird, especially when you have a character like Hachi who's going through a lot of change in each chapter. And, like, each chapter between them also, there's still time jumps, even though it is, like, this kind of straight line through following Hachi's progression. There's a lot of skipping in time. And especially, like, later with the 2-part chapter, I believe it's 8 and 9, where they technically, like, 9 is a continuation of 8, but it's, like, months later, and Hachi's changed a lot in that time, and we haven't seen any of it. So there's a lot of moments like that where I feel like maybe another chapter could have helped kind of space things out a bit. And there is one moment in particular in chapter 9 that I also felt was, like, very, very sudden, very out of nowhere, but in a way that it's kind of something you see in Vinland Saga too. I think just I guess we'll get into it when we get into it. When we get to that chapter.
and this is one of those things. I really wonder if the anime tries to give more air to these things, because like
true.
I would have loved to see, like, a more elongated introduction to Tanabe. Like, you could just, and I mean, maybe people would be like, oh well, this feels like filler and it's too slow. But, like, maybe if they were like, gave her just her own chapter and, like, see her interact with the crewmates a little more before just jumping straight into, like, Hachi trying to teach her how to float or stuff in space. These kind of things, like, could have given us a bit more air. Before we move on to, I guess, chapter 7, I mean, we went through that chapter pretty quickly for our standards.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
There's just one thing I wanted to highlight here, and it's a quote from Yukimura in the back of your book 10s in Vinland Saga, I want to say. It's the Real Q interview, so if you want to type up online, go Real Q, all one word, so like REALQ, with Yukimura. And this is the question, right? And it's the penultimate question, so basically on the last page. Let me change the subject. Advice from adults to children. Do you think it's important to emphasize the importance of having dreams? Should we tell kids to have dreams and tell them their dreams will come true? And this is what Yukimura says to this. So a reminder, this is like maybe 20 years after he's written, no, not quite 20, 15 or so I'd say 10 to 15 years or so after
Right.
he's written this, Planet S. He says, I used to think dreams were just desires. However, I was a good for nothing back then. So I think I was being resentful. At the very least, I don't think doing whatever you want to do is a beautiful thing. That's just you doing what you want to do. The truly beautiful things are helping others, volunteering, things like that, finding a home for a stray dog, or doing things that no other person wants to do. That's beautiful. This includes me, but to do what you want to do is simply selfishness. I received my role in society, but I couldn't carry it out. I wasn't a modest enough person for that. I said such things because I thought I would be able to do whatever. Sorry, I can't read. I said such things because I thought I would do what I wanted to do, no matter what other people said to me. It's the same for everyone, I think. Those who do what they want and succeed are simply the ones who ended up with a place in society. It's a miracle. After all, what some people want is to carry out meaningless terrorism, but it's the same thing. Both are dreams.
Wow.
And Yukimura has explained and has exclaimed many different times in various places how almost like he feels like he owes everybody for the fact that he's a manga author. That he owes everybody that he's able to do what he loves for so much fun as a manga author. That he almost has a sense of regret that he's able to write the stories that he wants to write and no one can tell him otherwise and people still buy them. Like, like he feels a sense of obligation. And I think he's not at this point when he's writing this story. Maybe it is. It's hard to really tell, but I don't think he thinks he's a good for nothing at this point. When he's writing this manga, I think he thinks he's past that. He's referring to maybe when he was in high school and he didn't do much.
I don't think he was referring to Vinland Saga. I mean, sorry, to while writing Planet S, because the whole point of this is that like that way of looking at dreams is flawed. So I think you're definitely right that he's thinking a bit further back.
He's trying to wrestle. Yeah, and I think this is what I think I love about Yukimura and just like stories in general that are like, hey, I'm an author and I've got these thoughts and introspections and I really want to wrestle with them. How do I wrestle with them? And then from that, Yukimura chooses a setting that can somehow fit it perfectly. And he's chosen space as the setting, and it's basically perfect. In the same way that medieval Europe and Norse Vikings and stuff like that is really good for Vinland Saga. Space is immaculate. Like, just thinking about the history that he's able to refer to history like Von Braun and all these other things, and be like, hey, space is literally the pioneering of mankind, and really setting your dreams out there on the horizon, which is really, really quite incredible. And having this kind of sci-fi setting allows for things to, have a bit of a more fantasy vibe to them, but still keep them very realistic. Sorry,
No, that's a very good thing to bring up. That's like exactly what this chapter and the whole volume is trying to say. That's so interesting because I remember reading that when I was going through the volumes for the first time, the Vinland Saga volumes, and I'm surprised I didn't consider it when I was reading this. That's like right on point.
Yeah. Well, if anybody's interested in this, this was basically the YouTuber that reminded me of this. He basically made a video talking about Yukimura's life, and it's probably the best Yukimura documentary online. It's not really a documentary; it's like 20 minutes long, and he just kind of makes an amalgamation or a collection of Yukimura's interviews and kind of weaves it together as a story. So it's very much based on all the interviews that Yukimura's done. So the video is called "The Saga of a Manga Creator Who Achieved Greatness," and the YouTuber is called The Man Goose. So if anybody wants to go look that up, it's got a picture of Yukimura with his Viking helmet on the thumbnail next to the prologue Thorfinn. That's all you can go watch that. But I think it's also this kind of pioneer. I kind of touched on it last time, but this idea of dreams. I think it's touched upon in Vinland Saga quite majorly with Canute and Thorfinn. Like I feel like Thorfinn is. I'm not just saying that like Hachi is like Prologue Thorfinn because of his relationship to his dad. Hachi is Prologue Thorfinn. They even quote the same thing when they're talking about. This is like in chapter 11. They talk about they eat, they drink, and they take a dump. You know, this is what they do. Like when they're talking about their father or Asklad or Goro, like they even use the same quote kind of deal. And it's just kind of like anger and like complete one single-mindedness on a goal and or a dream. But also later on with Canute wanting to make his paradise, he's kind of thinking about, oh, I want to, you know, I will sacrifice everybody to, you know, loads of people to make, you know, the world a better place. And that's not quite as selfish as, say, Locksmith in this, but it's still kind of in that vein. Or Thorfinn willing to put lives on the line for his basically experiment of Vinland.
Yes. And
this is like Ivar's criticism of him. Anyway, it's very interesting to see. Like, oh my word, this is like you always think Yukimura, surely you got something else to write about after 25 years. Come on, man. But you know, it's super cool to like go back to his old work and realize, yeah, no, he's been thinking about these things a long time, and he's able to weave it in, and a big part of how he thinks.
And I think that's probably the coolest thing to me about seeing the kind of parallels to Vinland Saga in this, in that it doesn't at all feel like a retread, even though like it's all kind of, especially in this volume, it's all kind of tying back into a lot of these central like ideas that really define Yukimura as a person. Like you can't, when you're writing a story, even if you go to write a different story, your kind of DNA is still always going to be in it, and you can see that here. Absolutely, but it doesn't feel like I'm reading the same arc again. It doesn't feel like it has the same focuses on different aspects of that idealism, and I think it's just executed very, very well here. But speaking of these like kind of parallels to Vinland Saga, if we want to move into chapter 7, I think that's where it kind of shocked me how much we're getting into it, because this sort of comes with the introduction of Tanabe, and I adore this character. I think she's incredible, and in a lot of ways, she kind of almost reminds me of kind of like that dynamic with Hild and Thorfinn, except a little less violent, obviously, a little less sort of meaning and I guess history behind it, but just like person who is here to kind of cut through the bullshit, you know, and not let Hachi kind of stay in his safe bubble that he's kind of put himself in. Because that really is what she is. At the end of this chapter, he says something like, Tanabe is invading my space and I can't stop her.
Yeah, great
She's
quote.
just she's this character who's here to completely flip everything that Hachi has come to believe after what he kind of admits to himself at the end of last chapter. He admits to himself that he is selfish, that he is doing this for himself, not for humanity, that he is like Goro, he is like Locksmith. And Tanabe just disagrees with all of it. So I guess a little background on Tanabe real quick. She's the new recruit on the DS-12, so she's brought here essentially to take over for Hachi while he's going to be gone with the Jupiter mission stuff. So someone has to take his role, so they're training her, and she's a total newbie and struggling to pick up the basics, and it's just frustrating Hachi. And one thing right at the beginning of this chapter that really, really interests me is Fee telling Hachi to kind of go easy on her, and she's saying that they need to shape her up so she can cover him while he's gone. And this kind of gets Hachi annoyed, because like the language Fee uses saying like while you're gone, it's like implying he's going to be back. And in Hachi's mind, it's this one track for his dream. He's going to do the Jupiter mission. He's going to get a bunch of money, get his own spaceship, and he's going to be gone from here. And he tells her that once this happens, the DS-12 will just be a fading memory. And when I read that, I was like, oh, this is why Yuri's arc, what happened before all of this. Because Yuri almost reminds me of a Thor's-like figure in this story, where you have this character who has kind of realized everything. he suddenly gets the message of the whole narrative. And now you have Hachi, who, because like at the end of I believe, what was it, chapter 4, where he talks with Kusaro, and he talks about like realizing that he doesn't need the compass anymore. And when he does this, he thinks about Fi and Hachi, and like this is the family that he found, and that the love he found there is his home. That's what's important. And now Hachi's talking about how the crew and the DS-12, it's just going to be a fading memory because it's not going to matter. And he's lost sight of that, while Yuri has finally realized that. And now with the story taking its focus less on Yuri, because Yuri is very much in the background here now, and we're all on Hachi, and we see him falling into the same issues where he's losing that sense of home. He's honed in on something, because Yuri's honed in on, I'm just going to find the compass, find my wife, whatever he was truly trying to do, and no focus on the people around him who care about him. And Hachi's now in that.
Yeah, no, I think, you actually just illuminated, because I had such a weird question, and this is more for, like, I guess when we get to chapter 11, but, like, Hachi goes through almost the exact same arc as what Yuri does in chapter 4. And I was, like, so confused, like, why are we retreading this ground? Like, I feel like we already covered this theme, and then I went back and was like, okay, it's with Yuri, I'm trying to figure it out, but now you said he's almost like the Thor's figure. He's even got the Thor's smile, like, when he just, like, he smiles, like, doesn't show any teeth, he's not grinning, he's just, like, this warm energy from him, and you're just like, I like this guy, he's a chill boy. But, I mean, I think there's, just in this chapter in general, I think, that there's a good bit of banter back and forth, like Tanabe, throwing up on Hachi and all this stuff, like he's putting her through the ringer, and he's really, like, I feel like he has this weird conflict of emotions where he's like, I really want her to get good real fast so that I can leave her earlier. That's his idea. And he's almost like, she's so bad that I may as well get someone new and go through it all again, because they'll be further ahead and he'll get out of here faster. But I think this is one of those things with the pacing. I'm trying to figure out, like, their dynamic. Like, Tanabe's kind of just thrown into this, and you're not really given much of an introduction to her. She's kind of thrown into this, and, like, her relationship with, like, Hachi. Like, why is Hachi getting so mad at this? And I think it's also because, literally, it's so slapped across the face, but what Tanabe's character is about, thinking about something further than yourself. It's about love, it's about compassion. And basically, Hachi, if they kind of, maybe if you had a bit of an introductory character to give me more time as a reader just to kind of figure out where these two are at, but, like, it's so clear, like, when reading this again, and to be fair, Yuri does make it really obvious, but, like, he's finding her annoying not just because she's bad and he can't get off the ship faster, but because he likes her, and she's distracting him from his dream. He is being distracted by her, just mere presence. They don't even know each other that well, but he's being all tsundere about it to kind of be like, oh, I need to get out of here. And quickly before I talk to you again, I did not think of Tanabe as like the Hild. I'm thinking this is what it would prologue Thorfinn be like if he met Gudrid.
That's probably
that's what I was
as well.
But also, that's only because I'm thinking like Hachi is being prologue Thorfinn. I'm also thinking of I think it really reminded me of the particularly Baltic Sea War arc of Gudrid and Bug Eyes, when they're on the ship and like she's getting super mad at him for like being super callous and being like, oh, I don't care about you guys, like, not I don't care about you, I'm gonna sneak away and leave you guys, and all this stuff. Like, I feel like that to me like makes so much sense. And she's just like this outburst of emotions, just like, you're an idiot, you're stupid, like, have a bit of decency.
Actually, now that you put it that way with the Gudrid comparison, it almost makes me think like, if Gudrid had actually liked Sigurd, this is where we would be.
maybe. Yeah. I mean, this is where my speculation comes on more. I'm thinking that, like, what Yukimura is going through, or like what he's writing about, he's met his wife. Like this is like, I feel like it's so obvious that Yukimura's wife is probably very much like Tanabe and Gudrid.
Mm-hmm.
I think like just reading his work, that's like it's complete speculation on my part. But this is what I feel like, just because
I think that's so correct. Because you also have Thor's with Helga, where Thor's was like very cold, and then it was the birth of Ylva, where Helga demanded that he give her a name that kind of changed his perspective on things. I think Yukimura likes tough women who are putting you in your place and kind of changing your perspective to actually also understand compassion.
Yeah, I feel like because maybe what happened is that like I mean like it could be like Yukimura's so focused on like his manga and his dream of making a manga, you know, as an apprentice, and he gets out of this, and then he meets a girl, and this girl is like also distracting him from his dreams, or like, you know, gets him out of his like callous ways. And that's a good idea, like good link with like Thor's. It's like Thor's also just has this like, I'm a Jomsviking, this is what I do, I got nothing else to think, you know, I'm just doing my thing, I don't have to think about further beyond.
The captain wants a boy.
Yeah, I just want a boy, this is what you do, I'm going through the motions. And then like, you know, like, and I feel like if you were to, like, as a general critique of Yukimura's writing, if you want to, and I think this is what, is that, like, I mean, and healed is the misnomer here, and I think actually Cordelia maybe as well, but, like, I've seen people criticize Yukimura for his female character writing at some points. I'm trying to remember their criticisms now, because they're, like, it's almost like Gudrid is very much like a tomboy and wants to go sail, and then she still just becomes your typical traditional housewife mother, and like to me it makes sense, but it's also like you could have done a lot more with Gudrid. And recently on the subreddit, as happens occasionally, everybody's like, oh, what happened to the Grease arc? Every single time I think about the Grease arc, I'm like, oh, we got no romance there.
Exactly.
And here I'm like, oh, this is like the possible Thorfinn Gudrid romance that we've been waiting for. And it was just in his earlier work, he's already written it right here. But in Planet Test, come get it, people. But
here's the thing with that, though. I'm glad you brought that up, because when Yuri was like, you like her, don't you? I was like, what?
Yeah.
I think Yukimura, if I don't like anything about Yukimura's work, is that I think he's terrible at writing a budding romance. He's good at writing a romance that is there already. So the actual development of one always, like, with Gudrid, it was kind of the same way, where it's just like the second these two met, you knew, oh, okay, like they're gonna be together because they're already in love, you know. Here,
well, it's only one way around.
Yeah.
Actually, this one's a little bit different because it does seem mutual, which I'm like, okay, good stuff for Yukimura there. But like in Vinland Saga, like Thorfinn is just being nice Thorfinn. He's not actually like, wow, exactly. I really like this girl. Gudrid's just like, oh, I really like this dude. Like he's like the nicest dude ever.
Yeah, exactly. And it even though like obviously the love between Thorfinn and Gudrid is very believable, it doesn't really have time to breathe. It's like they're friends and then they're married. And that there's this almost similar kind of thing here, I think, where we're so focused on what's going on with Hachi alone that we don't really have time to actually talk about it, and Yukimura's just saying it's there. Because when they were having their disagreements throughout this chapter, I didn't really see it that way as like, she's invading his world because she is kind of like he's falling for her. I saw it as like, this is somebody who is taking everything that he just spent all this time figuring out for himself, even though it's a very flawed perspective that he now has. This is like everything that has made him comfortable now. This isolation, his acceptance of isolation, not in the way that he is content with it, where he's instead throwing himself into it and staying there so he can be comfortable there rather than, I guess, being okay with it. And that's like the whole problem that he has after chapter 5. And I just didn't really see it. So when Yuri said, like, you like her, don't you? I thought that was, I was like, oh no, like that's not where I thought this was going. And
it just slapped you right across the face. Like,
it doesn't bother me, I guess. But I just kind of thought to myself, I don't think Yukimura can write a good budding relationship.
What?
Because
That's the thing. I think if they literally like, okay, here's your new recruit, join the team, they just hang her out for like one extra chapter, then you get a bit of more like, then you get like the Hachi actually kind of sizing her up, and like you get them like getting to know each other first. Like here, it feels like, because it feels like we're missing a chapter where they've got to know each other because they're already thrown in. Hachi's already mad at her. They've already feel like they've had this like, and like, what like where are we at with like this new character changing everything? And it's like, okay, if we're just giving it one more chapter, and I think this time's a lot more understandable than maybe later on. I mean, to be fair, later on, Yukimura, I guess he just doesn't care that much about it. I think that's like the only reason. I think he just doesn't care. He just doesn't care. Like,
I think that because there's a message he wants to send by having that love be there, so he puts it there. It's not that like we're gonna spend like a chapter building up, because I think. Like you're saying, if they introduced Tanabe before Hachi had his moment in Chapter 5, if she was, like, introduced in the last volume before he kind of became a bastard, we would be in a kind of different position where it could be believable. If they had, like, a nice warm moment, and then now they're having these issues.
Yeah.
I think it would have been very believable.
Then he has to go full tsundere, basically, which he is. He's a full tsundere, but you don't know why he wants to be tsundere in the first place. Like, anyway, it's only on rereading that I was like, okay, I think I get it. I like, there's a depth here that, oh, okay, that's nice. I like that. But first read through matters a lot, and like, yeah, I do think that though the fact that it is, I guess, spoilers for later on. I assume people are reading along with us. This feeling. I think it is mutual. I think maybe we'll see more later, but I'm pretty sure it's mutual.
I do believe it is. I think it wasn't shown properly to be mutual, but it is.
Yeah, which is better than, I will say, better than every other Yukimura budding romance I've seen.
That's fair. That's fair.
This may be the best one. I mean, so you have Aina and Arnie's, which isn't the focus. I mean, both are really strong characters in their own right, but Arnie just doesn't seem to think of Aina in that way at all, which always rubbed me the wrong way. Now, there could be like, say if Arnie, spoilers for Vinland Saga, I guess, if she survived, I don't know why I'm giving a spoiler.
I know, we talked about the last arc by now.
Yeah, exactly, whatever. But so she dies. If she kept on, maybe then she would have to grapple with like, oh, like my husband, and how can I that'd be super interesting romantic relationship to worry out as she's going through her trauma, and Aina's trying to help her through it, and like they do love each other, but like she's trying to get over like all her past with her previous husbands, or like her husband and Kettle and all these things, and you're like, that's like, okay, that's super interesting character to write about. But as we know, Yukimura, like he's so focused on his themes that I don't think it really matters. And then on the other hand, as we talked about before, you've got Thorfinn and Gudrid, which is like, man, you could have had such an interesting like looking at what Yukimura is doing with Hachi now, he can do some really solid character writing and character arcs. I mean, you know this if you read Vinland Saga, but like Thorfinn's character development of being like, I've never considered someone could actually love me romantically. How can I deserve love when I've done such evil things? I mean, he kind of alludes to this in like the thing, and then they time skip.
And then they time skip. Yeah. There's like literally the moment where he's going to confess to her, and he says like, "Are you sure you want to be with me after everything?" Yeah. And then you have after the wedding when they're in bed, and the ghosts haunting him are like, do you deserve to be happy? We could have had a whole arc about that. Like that. Yeah, like there's so much there of somebody who hates themselves so much that they don't feel deserving of love. But I don't want this to become a Vinland Saga. Yeah,
I know, but then Gudrid could come in like the queen she is and be like, no, I love you because you're this. I know the Thorfinn now, because that's what Gudrid would bring, and then you're like, Thorfinn can have this development, and then you'd somehow bring Winterbolt back into it, because he's all about love, baby, and he's coming in like an RKO out of nowhere, and it's the greatest thing ever. Yeah, exactly. And he's like, then he gets all the natives drunk, and that's like really problematic. Oh my word, it's just awful. It's just terrible. He gets along with Pulmug like a house on fire, anyway.
So anyway, Planet S. This book by Yukimura, it's really good.
It is really good.
We should talk about it.
Did we
No,
talk
it's
about-
important.
Did I talk about? I feel like I've talked. This is the thing with writing notes. Like I get started. I can't remember what I've said and what I've not said. Oh yeah, we have this amazing art of this coffin in space in chapter 7.
Yeah, I guess speaking about the art real quick, the explosion in last chapter, I kind of glaze over it. You know, let's talk about the art for a second because
It's so good.
this volume is such a step up. It's unbelievable. Because I went to go check the list of chapters on the volume, so I was going back through the first chapter, like backwards. I'm just seeing some of this first art, and I can't believe how much better it is already.
Yeah.
And it's already starting to... There's some little panels where it looks like Vinland Saga. Like, it looks like we're already... I can't wait to see how this looks by the end.
And after the last volume, I didn't think it could get that much better. I think this volume looks better than any prologue book. I feel like, because I think that's where, like...
I agree.
Because after, like, once you get to Farmland, Yukimura's art style just... You then see it shift. You just see it, like... I mean, it is a gradual shift, but he then really changes how he draws faces completely. But I feel like... I mean, honestly, I feel like the art in Plantest so far has been just as good as any art in, like, Vinland Saga in some way. I think the action is not as good. Like, when there is limited action, it's not quite as clear. I think you can clearly go better at that, because action is very hard to draw. But, like, character expressions, the background, the lighting, the cinematography, the framing, it's just all there. The detail, it's just, it's so good. It's like, if Yukimura didn't change style, this is what it would look like, and everybody would still be like, wow, Vinland Saga. Maybe they wouldn't be like, it's up there with, like, Berserk and Vagabond as some of the best art. But I think it could be. Like, the backgrounds are super detailed. Like, it's just so good. And, I mean, you see this, like, carcass of a dude from 2024, 2 years from now, by the way.
I couldn't believe... Yeah, no, I have stuff to say about that. Oh, my God. Yeah, no, let's talk about the actual kind of
this guy's going to drag Thorfinn down to Valhalla, baby. You know,
I
like,
know. I was thinking the same thing when I saw it. It looks like that first, like, the first corpse he sees in his nightmare. Oh my God. Okay, yeah. Let's talk about this guy. So yeah, we have Tanabe, and then after all these kind of, like, arguments where we have Hachi trying to convince her to basically quit, he tries to scare her out of the job. He tries to, like, tell her all the dangers of space, and also then saying, like, she doesn't have the motivation to do it either, or whatever. And there's actually this moment here where she says that she thinks she's found her wall, like she can't go any further than this. And this triggers Hachi's frustration, where he starts saying, like, there's no wall for anyone. And then he just kind of goes off on a tangent, like, of self-projection, where he's like, if I want to go on the mission, nobody could tell me otherwise. I can do it. And she's like, what are you?
It's like the most shonen protagonist
thing. Are you on the mission?
But it's done in, like, I mean, I know I don't want to be, like, shown in, like, in a pejorative sense, but, like, it's often used in, like, oh, this is shonen writing. Like I don't want to be like that. But it is, like, almost a self-aware, like, nothing can stop me. I'm going to be gotta go to Jupiter, man. I've got to be the best. But I also take her comment there as, like, I found my wall, I guess. Like, it shows, like, a little bit of, not apathy, but, like, the lack of drive in a way. But I also think it's a little bit sarcastic, because Hachiman is just beating, not Hachi.
Yeah,
Hachi's just beating her over the head with, like, oh, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. And she's like, oh, I guess I just found my wall.
She's clearly not someone who just quits when she believes in something.
Yeah, exactly.
She has a different drive here that we see very clearly later. But, so there's this moment here right after he goes on this tangent where he talks about his dream, because she asks, like, oh, are you at the Jupiter mission? He's like, oh, I'm glad you asked. And he talks about, like, he starts talking about humanity will be able to expand all over the solar system. And that was how he kind of approached it with Goro. But then he says that what he really truly cares about is that he's going to see it from his ship. He doesn't really care that humanity is going to expand over the solar system and be powered across the solar system. He wants to see it from his ship. That's what really matters to him. So he's done kind of BSing that it's about humanity or whatever. He knows that it's about him now, and I was kind of glad to see him admitting it, because I thought for a minute that he was just giving her this, like, humanity focused view on it again that he kind of at the end of last chapter realized that's not what really matters to him.
Yeah.
But no, he admits it here that it's about seeing it from his ship.
Yeah. He's already better than Ivor. He's already better. He's like, I'm not gonna cover up my what is it, altruistic cover for my reasoning. No, it's selfish, baby. Gotta go for it.
Yep. I'm glad he does that. But
yeah,
and then
respect
we come back again to contrast what Yuri learned in chapter 4, what like that whole arc where Hachi says, like, tells her, abandon anything that roots you in the sentimental, your family, your home, even Earth. Give your soul to space. So again, the forgetting home, it's here in full force in this whole volume, really. And I think this whole volume kind of gives more context on what that really means to Yukimura, the idea of abandoning home, forgetting about home. It's about forgetting love and forgetting compassion. Mm-hmm. And that's where Hachi is right now. And then Tanabe responds, some of us like love. And when she said love here, we have to focus on the word love now. Vinland Saga. Like, I was like, okay, this is what I would expect from Yukimura based on Vinland Saga. This focus on love. And he doesn't go as philosophical, I'd say, on what love is and what love means. But the focus is on love as a general concept of sharing and joy and compassion.
Yeah, and I think... Well, actually, when I saw the love, I think I was slightly spoiled on this. That I was told there was a romance in this, like, after, like, looking up something on the wiki for the last video, basically.
Okay.
And I think when I saw love, I was like, oh, she's the love interest now. And then Yuri kind of confirms that later. So maybe I wasn't hit as hard with the Yuri thing, but I do remember being like, I was like, man, this is really on the nose. But the thing is, it's like with love in like, I'm not sure if there's different words in Japanese, but love can mean so many different types of love. So like, I think I may have just got the wrong end of the stick. I think what you're reading there is more correct. And I think it's, I mean, this is such a classic thing in storytelling. I feel like it's talked about again and again, but I do feel like, maybe as I'm getting older, I'm realizing this matters more, but just like the small things in life, the people you meet, the friends you have, that is really important, and do not forsake that. And that's kind of what, like, this is also saying, is like that connection, that human connection. I mean, have you watched Fullmetal Alchemist?
Yes.
I guess spoilers for it. Like, the end is just like, there's the power of human connection, and that's what matters most. You go to, like, it's like, I know people be like, oh, the power of friendship is like cringy bad, whatever, it's a trope in things. But you're like, but the human connection matters, bro, and it's just how you want to talk about it. And yeah, it's exactly what you said, like, at home. And I mean, this is also off. I mean, chapter 11 is making more and more sense as I come through with this, I think. But
yes,
but it is like he's talking about home, and it's like, but this is after the no chapter where she's like, oh, space is my home, and this is kind of like, yeah, and it's like Hachi's still trying to put it all together, I guess. Like he's like,
There's still a lot of moments where I do feel like I'm not really getting what Yukimura is saying. I know there's a lot here that I'm gonna have to come back later, but I at least think we're picking up on the general themes. There's some moments where a character will say something and it clearly has meaning that I'm not getting yet. I can't think of a good example at the moment. I'm sure we'll come to one. But
I think there was a few I think chapter 11 got me really confused. And I think it maybe is slightly to do with like the translation or how it's written. Another thing is that like the fact that the font, and I've never noticed this before, but the fact that the font is mostly like capitalized can make like punctuation less like obvious and stuff, like where sentences start and end. I think there's so like if I was to read it out, it would make sense, but reading in my head, like, is a bit tougher. But Yeah, and anyway, to kind of bounce off exactly what you were saying, like, we are then presented with this coffin, and the man inside the coffin is the man who did exactly that. Forget his family, forget his home, forget his friends, and just go on in space. Even in death, when he's killed by space itself, he's like, screw you guys, launch me into space, because that's where I want to be.
Yep.
And it's like, this is a great contrast to Hachi, and I love how, like, initially they talk to the daughter, and the daughter's like, oh, I'm very respectful of my father, this is what he would want, you know, and all this stuff. And then Tanabe is like, screw that guy's, if he screwed off in your life, why do you care about him in death? Bring him home if you care about him and you want to see him, bring him home. Don't screw what he wants, you know, like, he abandoned you, like. And I like, in a small, like, footnote at the end, like, you can kind of see her in the background, this daughter, like, there, and she's like convinced by it, and she's like, yeah. Okay, bring him home. I kind of like, it was like a small win for Tanabe and stuff like that.
Yes, I want to absolutely dive deep into this whole thing with the corpse, because so like you mentioned earlier, this guy died in 2024, which is 50 years ago for them. And when Yukimura was writing this, it was probably like, what, 20 years later.
25 years.
25.
He started writing this in 99. So, I mean, at this point, he's probably in 2000. So, 24.
Yeah. I that's kind of almost shocking to me, how far ahead this must have been to him. But for me, I'm like, oh, that's like 2 years. I'll see this guy soon. But so this guy,
can we do that now? Can you shoot someone to space? Can you shoot astronauts into?
That's the thing. We're kind of nearing that territory where Yukimura's gonna have to decide when things happened, when things became possible.
Yeah,
and I mean, we're nearing the point where I don't know if we can.
If Elon Musk died like tomorrow,
if he wanted to, he could.
Like, he could. Like, Elon Musk, if he wanted to, he could shoot himself in space. Like, I'd be like, I'll put my coffin in space. Like, if he did die, like, and that was on his will, he totally could do it. Like, you got enough people out there. I'm not sure if they do it for, like, regular astronauts, but, like, I mean, there are companies making rockets, so you could maybe actually hire someone to throw something in space. I'm not sure if that's, like, a legal possibility, though. The only reason why you wouldn't be able to do it is because of the legalities. Like, they may be like, that's fleeting space. But anyway, Yukimura's on point with the timeline. That's what we were trying to say. He's on point.
I think he's still overall pretty good at, like, realistically depicting what could happen when. But yeah, obviously 2024, 2 years from now, it potentially could be reaching the point where, you know, a random astronaut's not gonna have a space funeral. But but yeah, this guy had a space funeral, so his coffin was launched out into space, and 50 years later, he's kind of found his way back into Earth's gravity. And I love this remark from Yuri here, where he says, maybe Earth's gravity never really let him go. And I love how Tanabe looks at this, because she depicts this as this man making a selfish choice, and after being in the cold, loveless abyss, after all this time, he's come crawling back, begging to be with his family again. And that's why she sees it as, no, bring him back. Not even just that, like, he didn't do anything for you. It's, look at him, he came crawling back for you. And I love that distinction. Obviously, he has no control over it, but, like, it's these series of cosmic coincidences that could bring him here. It represents, like, this is a guy who, he has gone down the path that Hachi has gone down, even in death has gone down that path, and now regrets it. Yeah. But Hachi doesn't look at it that way. He sees this as, this is the guy who had what it takes. This is a guy who knew what he was doing.
He's a king, Chad.
Yeah, exactly. And he tries to tell her that there are, like, some people, and he's kind of, like, projecting this here a bit, where he's like, some people just aren't happy on Earth like me and like him. And that it's just, like, the flaw in how Hachi sees all this and how he has forced himself to adapt, to get on this mission and overcome his insecurities. And I think it's brilliant that at the end, like, the daughter decides, like, no, okay, I'm going to take him back, because, like, even they said, like, in his will, all it said was, like, to put him in space. Nothing about, like, the mother, the daughter, what's going to happen with them. Nothing. It's just selfishness the whole way through.
Yeah, yeah, and I kind of like, it's like yeah, there's the Hachi quote of that guy had passion for the stars, and there's nothing wrong with that. Where would we
Yep.
be if we listened to all the earthbound cowards like you? And he kind of like, this is made like, Hachi does have some of a point that like, that people who are willing to sacrifice. This is made in the previous chapter, like people who are willing to sacrifice great things will achieve greatness at major cost, and
Yep.
all the rest of humanity gets to profit off of that. And that's what Hachi kind of says to him to help him believe that this is the idea to do. But he says,
Yep.
we live alone, we die alone, and that suits me just fine. And then some of us aren't made to be happy on Earth, and he's one of us. And then, Tanabe says, if we live alone and die alone, what's the point of living in the first place? Space is too big for that. And you're like,
I love
and,
that panel so much.
and yeah, this panel of like, just the art is so good. I also want to say, as much criticism as we may have for people may have for Yukimura's female character writing, his female character drawing and designs is like 10 out of 10 is amazing, and like he makes them look. I know it's like such a low bar, but for like anime and manga, like there's a bar that can be easily not met a lot of the time. And I mean, anyway, like Tanabe is just another reminder that Fee also great. But anyway, this panel, as you said, like space, just looks so good. Why space has never looked like better,
Yeah. It's the way he uses the negative space.
Yeah,
is
it's
perfect.
so good.
All of these like either like 1-page, 2-page spreads. They're always using the space, the like negative space, like literal space, very well, and to just communicate scale, even though like obviously you're limited to one or 2 pages, but the scale is just communicated so well anyways, and it's perfect.
Yeah. It's I mean, like there's just so many things, like this little car they go out to go grab the coffin is so cute and adorable. I love it. It's so funny. It's like these little things, and they arrive back home, and it's like it's just so many small panels that you could look endlessly at because of the detail in them. And like there's also this funny page of, so like they communicate to Fee what's happening. Like so Fee's taken Tanabe's taken the coffin is like flying past him. Like Fee's like, this is on page 312. Yeah, what about her, Hachi? She's stealing the coffin, and she's like, you have these 2 same panels, but she's like floating by, so it like communicates this nice little like comedic bit of movement. Just small things like that. Like, I mean. I can't praise enough this art. Like I adore it so much. And then the ending panel of her with the coffin over her head, like just standing there is like all I like. And Haji kind of says it to himself, which is, I think it's like, I've had it. It's time for me to give her a piece of my mind. If only I knew my mind. I already know. All I really know is Tanabe is invading my space, and I can't stop her. It's like, good. Excellent chapter. Hachi,
I
my
do
boy,
really like that admittance he has there, where he kind of admits like he doesn't really know what he's thinking at this point. And I guess that's where I probably should have seen that internal conflict he's having with like caring about her, because I didn't quite understand what he thinks he doesn't get, because I thought Hachi was in the mindset where he thinks he has it all figured out now. So it's interesting there that he kind of admits that he doesn't.
Oh, he projects like he does because he doesn't know anything else.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
He's like a more self-aware Prologue Thorfinn, and this is what I kind of really like about it, and it's like holding my likability intact. Like these little glimpses, like Hachi's going to figure out because he has enough brain power to do so. Like he has enough self-awareness to do so. And I think it's really, really awesome. All right. Do you have anything else for chapter 7? Let me read through my notes quickly.
Yeah. As well.
Oh, yeah. So interestingly, what I thought, I was like, it's interesting how like, because they're setting up this romance, the fact that you can have love in space, I feel like that's like a merging of these two like themes of like space. I know space is kind of, the definition is broadened later, but it's this idea of like, okay, you can have romance and this like, not just friendship, but this like love, which is kind of talked about. Like that's what Tanabe like will bring like thematically, but also like literally to Hachi's life, and
Yeah.
the fact that like oh, you can get your dreams and love to coexist. Maybe I don't know. Anyway, I thought that was like maybe I put like a bit of a question mark. I don't know if you have any, if that springs any thoughts for you.
I think it's interesting because Hachi has definitely this perspective where love cannot exist in space. It's a weakness in space. And it sort of plays into this idea, I think, of space as a vacuum. Like, nothing is meant to exist in space, and they're, like, kind of fighting space just to be there. So it's almost like a thing of, like, there's no time for that while you're out there. I feel like that's the perspective he kind of has, where when you're in space, you're there to be in space. You're not there to make connections and all that. And I don't think Hachi at the beginning would have agreed with that.
Yeah. I think, I mean, this romance, I feel like could be, like, it could be really, really good, and, like, it's just, it has the problem of the pacing, but, like, later on, like, Hachi has shown, like, how love saves him from space. Like, literally. Yes. This is, like, in a later chapter. But, yeah.
It's the same, Yuri. Same thing with Yuri, finding the compass.
Oh, true.
It literally saved him from allowing himself to be kind of caught in the emptiness of it all. And obviously that just plays in again. Yuri had this all figured out, but Hachi still needs to kind of make the mistakes. But I mean, with the romance, I mean, initially, especially with, we'll talk about it later, what happens in chapter 9, I was like, this is all happening too fast. But I think where the volume leaves off makes me hopeful for a bit more development of the romance rather than it just being there. Because not to get, like, jump all the way to the end, but we kind of leave it at a point where the romance thing isn't, like, happening. Hachi's still focused on the dream, but he has these feelings, and he's realized these feelings now.
Yeah, and he's recalibrated to fix it a little bit.
Yes.
It'd be interesting to see how he goes and how he applies it, as you say.
Yeah, definitely. I have a lot to say about that when we get to 11, because I think 11's really the kind of thematic kick for this volume, especially for Hachi's kind of arc throughout the through line of this volume.
For sure.
I guess there's one thing I would still like to say about 7. It plays into everything we already talked about, but Hachi kind of mentions the Sailor's Creed, and it just reminds me so much of like what a warrior is in
a true warrior, man.
Just but like what everyone else thinks a warrior is. Of like, this is what, like, you know, it's that masculine idea that Yukimura is criticizing again here as well, with like these people who are going into space, going up there, dying, forgetting about their home, their families, and forgetting about what's really important and like important about life. And it's just that same kind of thing where the Sailor's Creed, a very traditionally kind of masculine idea of the sailor, and
pirate's code.
Exactly, that kind of thing, or like a man alone at sea or something. It's like this romanticized idea in like kind of in culture, like masculinity, and Yukimura brings in Tanabe again to just like tear down all the bullshit. And I think that's what I like most about her. She's just here to, like, we've seen exactly how Hachi is now thinking, and in some ways you can almost think positively about it, but Tanabe is here to remind the reader of everything that is so wrong with how Hachi has tried to suppress his feelings. And it's, again, like, that's a very traditionally, like, masculine problem, a problem with masculinity, rather, that, like, the suppressing of emotions, not talking about how you feel. And
the culture around it. And
exactly.
This is I mean, Yukimura seems to do this a lot with his female characters, like as a way to undermine, particularly in romantic situations, undermine their male counterparts. So like the one I can think of is Estrid with Halfdan. You know, that's a great example. And I'm probably sure there's a few more I'm just forgetting about right now. good grief, my brain's going haywire. But yeah, Estrid with half down's another one of this kind of taking them down a peg a little bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, so yeah, let's move on to chapter 8 then. And this is where we kind of get the reintroduction of the Space Defense League as like a sort of primary antagonistic force, as they're directly opposed to the Jupiter mission and, by extension, Hachi's dream here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't seem super... Yeah, they're definitely the antagonists, but they don't feel super villainous. Their
agree.
methods are very, very strong. They are terrorists. But I don't know. It's interesting with the introduction of Hakimu. Hakimu. Anyway, it's interesting that it feels like a very Japanese name. Though he's not from Japan. Anyway, like almost giving a feel of humanity to latch onto and see another human character in that group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like how he was introduced here as as if he's like a fellow recruit. I thought we were going to just get another kind of recruit character that Hachi can kind of build a friendship with. But there's a lot of moments in his introduction that are already very suspicious. They kind of went over my head the first time. I don't know, were you suspicious of him?
No,
when you were first reading? Yeah.
No.
But like going back and seeing like, especially his reaction to the elevator. Well, one, he's bringing up the terrorists all the time, like, and always trying to like sort of talk about it in a way that would dissuade Hachi if he wasn't so focused on this mission already.
Mm-hmm.
But when the elevator is about to explode, he like has a moment, like you can see like an exclamation mark in his speech bubble. Like he notices that Hachi's like going into the elevator and he intentionally stops him. I didn't catch any of that when I was first reading. In fact, like later in this chapter, when he goes off on his own, I thought he was going to run into a terrorist. I didn't even consider that he was like part of the Space Defense League. And in the next chapter, I guess jumping a little bit ahead, we find out he's like the leader of, at least we suspect he is. They offhand mentioned that the leader is an Arab man, and that just kind of lines up with who Hakimu is. So it seems like he is like in charge of this stuff.
Yeah, I think as soon as I saw him in the next chapter, I was suspect of him because he's going off by himself. There's like one panel of him looking over his shoulder, which I think I saw. But yeah, like in this first chapter, I mean, looking back at it, it is nice. It is a good characteristic there. Like, he stops him from Hachi from getting in that elevator and then saving his life basically, which is, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, he gives a reason for why he doesn't want Hachi to die, and it's hard to say at the moment. Maybe you have a stronger opinion, but he seems to actually like Hachi, right? He doesn't, yes. But he kind of says later, I don't perceive you to be a threat, but that's more of, I feel like an emotional cover-up, because I don't know why Hachi would be so useful to him alive. Maybe Hachi does have something, but I don't see it.
I did have a lot to think about that, and I think the best way to really figure it out is by considering what Yukimura chooses to put between this first introduction of Hakimu and then the reveal of him being a terrorist. It's this conversation at the bar with Tanabe, where Hachi basically, when this elevator exploded, Hachi just walked away to meet up with Yuri and Fee at the bar, and like they're pretty shocked by it. They're like, "Oh, you didn't like stay to help or anything," and Hachi's like, "It's not my responsibility to clean up after SDL. They're trying to scare us into shutting down Jupiter Project. What a joke! A hopeless cause for hopeless people." And they're kind of just shocked by this, and I think it's on the next page where Yuri makes a comment where he feels like Hachi's changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And go ahead.
I mean, I just wanted to point out something. This is one of the coolest speech bubbles I've seen in a while, where Tanabe is literally like yelling so loud it goes through his ear and out the other, and then it appears on the other side of the corner.
I didn't
So
notice
cool.
that. That's so cool.
Yeah, I really, really like that. I think, yeah, I mean, it is like the spiral downwards of like you are seeing Hachi's like decline as he like the only remark he has for the people getting exploded was, I could have been in there. You know, like it is
Yeah.
completely selfish. And so, what are you saying? Basically, like,
Yeah.
like
I'll go on about what I was getting at.
yeah,
So the most important thing that Tanabe says here in this argument, where like Hachi like is basically talking down the whole love thing. He's mocking her about it, saying like she's ignorant. She says he's ignorant. Blah blah blah. But then what she says is this actually is what kind of shakes Hachi a little bit. She says deep inside everyone is an innate ability to care, and the reason I think that's so important is that I think this obviously frustrates Hachi, but she's right about this, because even though when Hachi's having this conversation with Hakimu after like while he's pointing the harpoon, the anchor gun at him, he's pointing that at him, and Hakimu is explaining like his background, basically explaining why he's a terrorist, because he's from a like Middle Eastern country where they were used for their oil reserves, and basically these larger, more powerful nations used them until they were useful anymore, and then they just sold firearms to both sides of the civil war until the country basically destroyed itself. And throughout this whole thing, Hachi keeps insisting that he doesn't care, but I think Hakimu sees in him that he does. I think Hachi, one, recognizes that Hakimu saved him. Hakimu intentionally saved him, and he hasn't shot yet because this is about finding out why. Why did he show him that compassion even though he's a terrorist? And then Hakimu sees in him that Hachi does have this compassion in him too. They both prove Tanabe right. That's the way I see it. They both
interesting.
Can be compassionate, and they both have that innate ability. And that's why next chapter is very important as a comparison to this. But
I mean, I like off that Tanabe quote is like she's drawn like more pretty, I guess.
Yeah.
So like she's like, they're quite going at each other, and then they have like this. And there's a few times where Yukimura does this, where she's like, he actually like renders out her lips more. This happens later on, and like anyway, but I think it's like kind of going through the point of like Hachi, where it's like, oh, she's pretty, and then he gets so flustered about it, and then he goes, oh damn it, and then he like pushes her face away literally, so he doesn't have to look at it, which I think is interesting. I also thought what you were saying also maybe with Hachi, with Hakimu, is that he's watching and he's looking at Hachi's reaction, and maybe he kind of has less sympathy for him later on because he doesn't think he's as caring or something like that because of his reaction to the people getting exploded or something. Because after this, there is like this nice gesture where like he still tries to convince him not to do it, and then he sees how determined he is, and he literally gives up. He like puts his hands up in surrender, which I really like. This kind of like I tried,
like, all right,
kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's the way they interact here is really interesting, because when we have Hakimu slipping away, and he comes across this one guy who kind of like tries to direct him back to the tour group, and when he goes away, Hakimu is like what a brainwashed kid, so innocent and deluded. He definitely sees Hachi this same way. It's this young, ambitious kid who doesn't realize what he's doing. And I think throughout this, Hakimu's slowly kind of seeing that he's misjudging Hachi a little bit. But by the end, he is kind of proven right. I think that, like, obviously Hachi didn't pull the trigger. He struggled to. And it's to show that he still has this compassion here. But I think before we get too much into the end of the chapter, there's still this really important moment between when he's at the bar and when he's on the tour. We have Hachi alone in his room, and we see his double again. I think this was first seen, what, chapter 5, right? That was the one time we saw it.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's back again, and I'm definitely having a bit of trouble, I think, figuring out what does the double really mean. Like, obviously, it's his most negative traits. It is like a personification of the worst of him. But what really triggers it for Hachi to make it show up? And I think what I'm figuring out is that this thing shows up when Hachi is struggling to understand himself. That's how I've tried to put it so far. I think it's when he's like in his most pain, he takes it to himself because he can't take it to anyone else. That's the best way I can really picture it, why he shows up, what triggers it for Hachi.
Yeah. I think the vision isn't always his most negative self. It's just another voice inside his head that he's trying to ignore. And I think that's the key thing. Is like, it may be some sort of doubt. It may be some... In this conversation, he's actually very, very amicable and actually giving him almost the correct advice. You can tell kind of in the character design of this Hachi, this doppelganger, because he's got his helmet off. He's kind of relaxing. He's got a spacesuit on, but like he's being relaxed. And he's kind of saying, like, he's calling him out on, like, you're too stubborn or selfish and timid, insecurity and regret will eat you alive all night. Why don't you ask for help? Like, he kind of says, you're lonely. Why? What are you doing? And then he kind of says, well, you can share love, but you can also, you can share pain as well. And that helps lower the burden. And, like, he gives her, like, which... we talked about this before, where it feels a little rushed, but it's like, he says, she'll accept you no matter what, she's that type of girl. Like, to me, I never got that impression.
Me neither.
But I think it's an interesting insight where, like, Hachi's trying to ignore what his alter ego is saying, and this I think it's mainly just to show a personification of, like, conflict within him. I think that's probably why. And in this situation, unlike in I guess in chapter 5, he does come to agreement with his older self in the end, but like that was a lot more antagonistic and like, oh, you won't make it, you won't survive in space, it's over. Like, that's his self-doubt creeping in. This time he's like, hey, like, he's just trying to keep this guy out of his head because he knows what he's saying is true.
I almost think maybe it's more so a version of him that understands, like, that gets it, because I'm sure he feels like he can't bring his pain and his, like, insecurities to anyone else because they don't understand, and the only person he needs is himself. And this is like almost like an idealistic version of himself that kind of doesn't really have a lot of feelings, and it just understands what he's going through and will just listen to him and talk back and forth with him. But that moment that you mentioned where it talks about Tanabe, it definitely, like, it was a bit unsettling to me, especially the way the face is drawn. It's like, because, like, we have to accept that this isn't just, like, something else. This is still Hachi. This is still something that he's thinking. And the way he's thinking about her is kind of a little, like, it makes me uncomfortable. Like, she'll accept you no matter what, like, the way he characterizes her, it's upsetting.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe like, because what I was saying earlier, that feels like it's something that I'm not sure of, because it's like his misreading of the situation. Or
I think I'm kind of misreading it, actually, because I think the way when he's saying she'll accept you no matter what, it's not in the sense of, like, I think it's more in, like, the sense that she's compassionate and that, like, she's a very accepting person, accepting people's flaws.
Yeah,
but
I don't know. If I think it's hard to say. I think the weird thing here is that the light darkens, and then you're like, this one's
Yeah.
evil. But if you look at his face, it's a really warm smile. The expression says it's benevolent and it's not conniving. It's like she'll accept you no matter what. It's like in the sense that like even if Hachi is flawed or done stupid things, she'll still, she'll still, she'll still accept him. It's not like if he opens up that she'll then push him further away.
Yeah,
that's
you know,
not the
you're
case.
right.
That's
This
the
is
idea.
way more positive than I initially read it as. It definitely is because I think I interpreted it more as like even like no matter what you do, even if you keep like hurting her and upsetting her, she'll accept you. That's like that kind of toxic way to look at it is how I saw it. I think you're right. And then this almost makes Hachi himself here be the worst of it.
No, I definitely think so, because then you turn the page and then you definitely see something like kind of evil. It is that like, I mean, I'm pretty sure I've seen Thorfinn pull this face at some point where they're like, their mind, loneliness, pain, insecurity, regret, they're especially not for sharing with Tanabe. I don't need anyone. Soon I won't need even you. Which is kind of true, actually. At the end of this little bit, he won't. Maybe. I mean, I'm not sure. We'll talk about the double in a bit, but yeah, like this is definitely like a lot dark, and he's just really just trying to push him out. Yeah.
I think it's
As
interesting
Cinderella as
that,
you can get.
in this where he lists out all these problems with him, he leaves out the selfishness, and I like that. Like what he's saying is essentially displaying his selfishness. That's all for me. It's not something I will share with anyone.
Oh,
that kind
interesting.
Of thing.
You're stubborn, selfish, timid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just a good catch.
And especially here, this I thought it was really interesting when Hachi said, "I don't need anyone, and soon I won't even need you." Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting here that he's sort of admitting that he does need this double of himself because he has totally isolated himself, but it's almost like this because it all started with this fear of isolation. He's almost like made another version of himself that can talk to him and make some sense of things that he's struggling to understand, and not because like he's now capable of confronting his like insecurities and loneliness. He's just kind of fooling himself. That's the way I interpreted this, and he's trying to get to a point where he won't need to cope in this way, like by locking all of this pain away into his double.
Yeah,
so he sees it almost as like an incomplete kind of step.
Yeah, and I think he's just annoyed that like he's being reminded of this. You know, this is what's holding him back. Tanabe is the issue. She's making him stray from his goal, his dream. It's just that overall frustration at her. Yeah. But then we go on to see Locksmith. Describing stuff, giving a bit of background. It's interesting when he gives this expression of, it's a painful process, and he's like, shows a bit of expression, but Hakimu is definitely not accepting it, you know.
Yeah.
And to be fair, Hachi isn't either. Hachi's just like, just get me on that ship, I do not care about
Yeah. Did you see
else.
this? There's this one guy in the background on 346 behind the speech bubble, right in the middle of the page. His hair looks exactly like Thorfinn.
Oh yeah, a little bit interesting. Yeah,
the back hair. It looks so much like him.
Current Vinland. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Let's see. So yeah, we have this moment between them where Hachi being unable to fire the gun is really important because of the way it plays into the next chapter where he isn't a target yet. And then at the end of the chapter, we have like the 6-month time skip here after the final exam has been administered. So they just took it. They don't know the results yet. but Hachi is in this last group of 23, which Hakainu is no longer part of it.
Yeah.
Hakimu rather, and then he also like Hakimu disappeared and no one's talking about it, right? So it's like again with Locksmith, this like not giving in to the terrorists, not really caring about the civilian casualties or anything like that.
Yeah,
it's just not being talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But Hachi at the end here, and I want to see what you think of this line where he says, "I should have shot him; it would have saved me." What do you feel Hachi's like saying there?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure actually. I didn't really catch it, so I didn't really think of anything. Maybe it's like this is what his perception is. Like if he shot him, and this goes into the next chapter, he wouldn't have anything holding him back from his dream. It like to him it shows he still has that weakness and not being able to kill, not being able to like he's the reason why this like if he had shot him. Well, I don't think it would have actually made any sense because I think one would have gone off anyway. But at least in Hachi's head, it's like if he shot him, he would have been on Jupiter way earlier. You know.
Oh, like by stopping like the bomb.
Yeah, by shooting him and then stopping the bomb. Yeah, like it's like he just blames himself for all of this and the fact that he stopped himself. Like, he failed to try and achieve. He delayed himself achieving his dream because of his own weakness.
That's interesting. So I feel like with these explosions, the story doesn't want me to take them seriously. So I'm struggling to take them seriously myself. So I almost because whenever an explosion happens, I feel like there's no consequences, like unless like I guess Yukimura wants there to be consequences in some way, but it feels like they just kind of happen, and I feel like this is a thing with violence in general in this story. Coming from reading Vinland Saga, it's not as serious. We mentioned this in the last video, and so I didn't even consider the fact that Hachi might like care about the setbacks of this explosion. I saw it purely as a mental thing, where he feels like when he says like soon I won't need you anymore, referring to his double. That would have been had he had shot him, that would have been like his ticket in, basically. Like it's the by like killing somebody, he would have completed his like I don't know growth.
Yeah, or I think it's more like, and this is brought up next chapter where it's like if he shot him, he would have had no weakness. You know, he would have been a different person. He would have been stronger. Right. Maybe also, you know, he would have been rewarded for stopping a terrorist. And then automatically get on the ship. I don't know. We'll see. But I think it's just more like to try and be like, oh, Hachi's going down this path. And it's interesting you talk about violence here because, yeah, this definitely feels like a cartoony violence, like where like, none of the stakes really feel that high. Like when the explosions are first introduced, it's chapter 3. It's definitely the most goofy. Like Fee rams her ship into, you know, into the side of whatever another ship to stop it exploding and all this stuff, and like Hachi's death doesn't really feel like that close, you know, like there's so many explosions, you know, of you know, a rocket going in a domestic house at home or something like that. Like it like to me, like I just don't feel like I have like a great grasp of the surroundings and the damaging caused because we see no aftermath to any of these things, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. As you said, it's just like something compared to Vinland. But then we get on to something later where it is like violence is something to grapple with. And I wonder if it will change from now on because, I mean, to be fair, I think if you're happy to go into chapter 9.
Yeah, we can go into it. I guess for 8, I mostly wanted to end it on the note of like what's important to take away because chapter 9 is essentially part 2 of what chapter 8 started. So with this dynamic we have between Hakimu and Hachi, we have Hakimu seeing Hachi as like an ignorant kid who he thinks he can convince to see their side, and he doesn't see him as a threat yet because he thinks that he can save Hachi. But at the same time, Hachi doesn't see it this way and will just continue on this path until Hakimu can't ignore him. And then, despite like selfishly saying otherwise throughout their whole conversation, we have Hachi being unable to kill Hikainu because he couldn't stop himself from empathizing with him. And that, at least that's the way I had interpreted it, because it's kind of hard to see why did Hachi choose not to shoot? Why couldn't Hachi shoot? And with the inclusion of what Tanabe had said about the innate ability to care, I think the point was to show that that's still in there with Hachi, and then Hachi considers that a weakness he needed to overcome in this moment. But that Hachi isn't all the way gone yet, and that's definitely set up with the purpose of contrasting Hachi now against Hachi 6 months later in Chapter 9. So I guess to start with Chapter 9, one of the things that we probably should talk about is the name of the chapter. It's a black flower named Saki no Haka. And this is a reference to a poem. And Yukimura puts an excerpt of the poem here at the start, and I'm just going to read the whole thing.
Yeah, please do.
Beat them down, beat them down. Those who have worked hard only to waste away drinking. Those who have sought to learn about the world only to conclude that it is a barren wasteland. Those who have excelled in life only to lord over their fellow man. Tear them all down, get those devils out. Make them work under the fish and pigs. We must temper the steel of the new generation. We must surmount the blue majesty of the mountains. We must look to the galaxy for our power. I spent like an hour trying to find the full translation of this poem, and I don't think there's a full English translation of it. I looked everywhere. I found so many of like these old websites that are just like fans of this poet Kenji Miyazawa, and in all like the fan translated English works, I can't find any. So this might be the first official English translation of this poem, which is interesting. And it's only an excerpt, so I really wanted to know the whole context of it, but unfortunately we couldn't find that. But I think obviously Yukimura chose to show this excerpt specifically, so we have this to work with here, and this is what he really wanted to show us. So what were your thoughts on the excerpt before we get into the chapter proper?
Yeah, I kind of viewed it as almost the motto of the what is it, the EDL is called?
The SDL, yeah, the Space Defense League.
Sorry.
It's all right.
EDL is the English Defense League. And it's very politically right-wing, shall we say. So, SDL, I feel like it's a motto for them. And also Yukimura kind of pushing, I think there's one thing, is like, for people to conclude, well, maybe it's a mix. It kind of ties in so many things, but it's like those people who basically do stuff and exceed in stuff and yet do nothing with it. Like if you're going to go, like, it's kind of like, but it's almost like an anti-elitism poem as well. It's like, beat them down, make them, like, particularly the lord over you. You know, like, keep working hard and stay humble and stay diligent in a way. But I'm not sure. Yeah, I was trying to figure out which perspective it's from. Maybe it's from the SDL, maybe it's from Hachi, maybe it's from a bit of everybody. And maybe this is just something that, like, when we come back to it at the end of the manga, we'll understand it better. Maybe. I don't know.
I definitely saw it, like you did, as the sort of SDL, I guess a characterization of their motivations. It's definitely very focused on this idea of, like, rising up and, like, tempering the steel, the new generation, and in order to get the devils out. It's the idea. I definitely don't see it as a humble. Humility. I forget the word you used. Was it humility?
Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, something like that. I definitely see it as a call to action. really.
Yeah.
But I think the part that I didn't quite get how it meshes with the rest of it is we must look to the galaxy for our power.
Yeah, precisely.
I that's why I really wanted to see more context to this poem, because I'm not sure how that works into it, because I almost see that as like it's a bit ominous, I guess, where you have the beginning parts of the poem talking about like rising up against these powerful people who are like have this power but they're not doing good with it. And it almost seems like, I don't know, building up to the idea that the people who are rising up will become the powerful.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I got a kind of ominous feel by that last line, but yeah, I was really interested to see what you think, because I spent a lot of time trying to gather my thoughts on this poem, and I did not get as much as I hoped, especially because I spent a lot of time looking for it.
Yeah, that's a shame. I didn't spend a ton of time thinking about it, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah, that kind of works with it. But I think I was pretty interested, pretty grabbed by the next page.
Yeah.
Seeing Goro do some pretty cool fighting here. And I think the action here is actually pretty fun. I think there's one thing. It's just general action. He's fighting away against space defense people, because I think they're coming after him because maybe with his change of heart, he's wanted to join the team now. I'm not sure where he's at with that. But
yeah, it seemed like in chapter 6,
he's still a bit of a
figure
figure egg.
I think he is on the team already, because they actually mention, I think it's in the next chapter. The chapter after that. They mention how they're training, like Hachi and Goro's training schedules are different, so they don't get to see each other much. So they're both in it.
Okay, cool. Nice.
But yeah, they're coming after him, and then I had a lot of fun reading this chapter. I loved a lot of the comedy in the action here. But it is definitely prime example of like, I don't really take this seriously. I don't. Yeah. Very Baltic Sea War kind of thing, where lots of gaffes happening in this otherwise pretty, like, should be pretty violent.
Yeah, but, I love the bit. Like, I actually thought it was Hachi that was about to ambush
me too.
Tanabe behind the door here, because he didn't have the beard and they look the same with their hair, basically. And I think that's the point. You're not sure who it is, and then they have the cool effect, which you do see in Vinland Saga, where someone gets smacked to the head, and they I think when Thorfinn gets punched in the face, and and he goes to Valhalla. This is like the same kind of thing he has, or Einar when Thorfinn punches him when he gets really mad at Kessel in chapter 94, 95 or something. Like, it was really fun, and then it's just more like goofs and gags, which are just good fun in general. And I think there's another cool thing about the combat is like Goro's being really at the beginning he's being very smart and very cunning, and then later on and someone rolls this grenade at him or something like that, and then he tries to do the same trick to them later, which is just one of those things that tie the two little bits together. But I just love the stars he gets in his eyes. It's just hilarious.
That gag,
and then he's about to go for a third time.
Yeah, then he's about to go for a third time. The rule of threes there. Yukimura knows what he's doing with comedy. Because that was so funny. And I love how low-key it is, too, with the third one. Because you just see him for a second with the star eyes. I laughed so hard at that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they just start blasting, start shooting. He is Goro's the vent master. We see him how he used it in the, going back and reading this again. I'm like, oh yeah, he used it in chapter 6 really effectively.
Right, yeah.
Fighting in all these vents. And now he knows the system really well. He's a bit of a rat. But we always like rats, don't we? But yeah, so I'm also, I'm appreciating that Tanabe's in just general work clothes, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I love her outfit. She looks great here.
Yeah. Just real chill, just like normal work vibes. And then I love how they're running. They're like kind of running, It's just like one of those small details of like, they're just hopping along and going at it. And then they kind of link it together with chapter 3, which I like. Is like, oh, they started to get a little bit more antsy since Fee pulled that stunt, because they were losing economic backing and by different people. And it's interesting how like the SDL is like using different space companies, money to then bomb the other person, bomb the competition, and just cause general havoc. But I guess since it was a fail or such a public blow up, they've had to resort to other means, which is I think is interesting.
Here's where they mentioned, like I said earlier, where they have a new leader, and Goro offhand mentions that it's an Arab man. And
yes, true.
Which definitely means Hakimu is that leader. I'm pretty sure that's what they'd be insinuating here, especially with how the chapter ends. But I think the important point in this sort of flow that I want to stop at is Hachi here being willing to put civilians at risk for their safety. And for quite a while now, ever since her kind of introduction, her clashing with Hachi, when Tanabe when he's going too far, Tanabe usually reacts with like this anger or like kind of like violence, but that like that tsundere kind of violence where it's not like really violent, but she gets like kind of physical with him, like grabs his ear like before, and here she goes to punch him, and he usually just kind of takes this in a kind of goofy way, but he like catches her and just tells her to cut the bullshit. And I think that's the first moment, besides like obviously the fact that he's willing to risk civilians, but this is kind of the moment where I realized, okay, this isn't the same Hachi as
he
before.
means business.
He's definitely had a change of heart ever since kind of losing to Hakimu.
And then instantly he gets yeeted by his dad, which I actually liked. I actually enjoyed a lot. I like, to me, like, while it's literally on the same page where you have this kind of like hard, like, oof, emotional moment, it's like, guys, we can't dilly-dally here. And I actually appreciated that pacing, which generally I feel like the fast pacing is always on the edge of being too fast. Here's just one of those situations where it works really well. At least in my opinion. And as you say, it's a bit of a foreshadow of what's to come. Then Goro takes out a little can bomb, and then they have a big dispute over it, which is interesting.
I thought that was very funny.
Yeah. But they've like taken the pin out, and so they're just like, oh my word, if they throw the grenade, it's going out. And then Hachi drops it, and then our boy Goro like just kicks it. I love this little angle. It's just like, so long, friend. Like it's yes. It's a good bit of comedy, but it like flows with the characters. It is pretty exaggerated. Like Tanabe, like literally being like getting shot by people, and then wanting to save them no matter what. So much that they may like shoot. I guess there is civilians in this area. That's the idea.
I do think it really is just that she doesn't want them to die. Like that's just the kind of person she is. She's very, like, pacifistic.
But like,
I do think that it's changed.
Even at the cost of them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like the willingness to risk their lives to like protect the people who are trying to kill them. That's very, Yukimura. But I don't know. I keep talking about the violence being kind of silly, and I don't have a problem with it. I really loved this chapter. It was really fun. But I just think it's interesting to look at how seriously like Yukimura takes life, the value of life. And it seems like he's not quite there. Obviously, he's not trying to write about violence in this story, but it almost feels like he's not quite there yet in his view of violence. But Tanabe is sort of like that sort of Vinland Saga philosophy there of like you can't throw this, you'll kill them, and they're like, yeah, we know, like what's wrong with that?
True.
But I do think it's interesting though that he has somebody who does take this like death seriously, despite the fact that the story doesn't really take it seriously.
Yeah, but then it does, and I think this is probably the most
Yeah.
interesting thing. It's like, so I actually noticed that like in the wind here, you can see Hakimu kind of talk
Yep.
to his like group. I was like, oh, that looks kind of like him when he says, "Look for an evacuation lock, hurry."
Yep. I caught that when I was going through it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I do like how like the whole tempo of the fight changes when there is like a breach. Like all the wind just changes the feeling. Like it feels a lot less comedic. And then they're like, "Oh, everybody's out, okay." And then Hakimu whips the gun on them. You know, Goro and him have a little bit of spat. Hakimu comes on top, but the gun is dislodged. Then, then Hachi has to save his life. And then like it's like, oh, that's my boy, get in there. And then he's like, don't move a muscle. And then you flip the page and it's like got the gun straight at him. And I mean, this scene to me, another I guess spoiler for around about the midpoint of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. So skip ahead. But I mean, actually, do you know the scene I'm talking about? Do you think you know the scene I'm talking about?
Vaguely, it's been a while since I've watched it in
Yeah, it's been a while too, but basically, for those who haven't seen it, like there's Vigilante Scar, called Scar, sorry, who's like attacking people, and he gets in a confrontation with the main character called Edward, and Edward's I guess childhood friend Winry, like she like realizes that Scar killed her parents, I think, and then she's like pointing a gun at him, like in a sense of wanting revenge. I mean, in my opinion, like this different context, but there's like a sense of like, two different love interests like trying to take away the gun from a terrorist. Anyway, there's something in there that I saw a similarity in.
But yeah, okay, we have Hachi with the gun, and so I definitely want to focus on this because this is definitely important. I was like, my heart was definitely beating for this part. Because I thought that he might actually do it. But, so we have Hachi pointing a gun this time, and you can see the look in his eyes, and Hakimu sees it too, that he has a far different look in his eyes. It's not one that shows compassion anymore. And we just see, like, the extent that he has changed since the last time. And, let's see. And this makes Hakimu admit that, like, now he's a target because he's become someone else that is genuinely a threat now because he's willing to do this. So there's no doubt at all that Hachi would have done it without intervention, in my opinion. Do you disagree with that, or are you on the same page?
I think he would have. Yeah, I also agree.
But so this definitely plays into the end of last chapter where Hachi said it would have saved him if he killed him, right? And Hachi says here that, after Hakimu says, pull the trigger, you'll be reborn, you'll be a creature unhampered by mortal restraints of humanity, you'll surrender away love, passion, your dreams, you'll be truly free. And Hachi says, you're right, I'll be utterly alone, but space is the only friend I need. So he definitely sees it as, like, the trial he needs to overcome to be truly alone and be okay with that. And Hakimu says something here that really stuck with me. It's just it's really strong.
It caught me super off. Yeah, it was really strong language. Like I don't think I've ever heard like he says the word rape. I'm just like oof. As soon as I don't think I've ever seen that like I can't remember the last time I saw those words written in like a fictional circumstance. Like it does carry heft to it.
Usually it's like more of a insinuated, when rape is being is like a topic or something that is happening in a story. But yeah, it does shock me because what he says is fall into the abyss, be who you want to be, and rape the space you love. It's like this. I don't know. It kind of. Actually, this reminds me of something I kind of wanted to talk about with last chapter, where war was kind of like a primary subject when Hakimu was explaining his perspective and what happened to him, and you could see and I do feel like this is kind of like a war related thing based on his traumas, where the way his country was treated, where it's like used and then disposed of, that kind of disgusting feeling. And that was the where I kind of saw where this, I guess, idea came from, where this phrase comes from for him.
Yeah, I think it's also like he's pro like saving like the universe from humanity, and he thinks that like what humanity does by going out there is basically raid, pillage, and rape, the resources of the world, of Jupiter, and taking it away, basically. And that's what that's what he thinks Hachi, whether he wants to or not, will be doing if he goes on this thing to Jupiter. Will be setting up humanity to make barren, like his country, of all that is good and beautiful about it. And so, like forcefully taking the beauty from it without it. It's consent. So it's strong language, but it does fit the frame. But then, Tanabe kind of slots in here, and it's like, it's interesting. You'll be unhampered by the moral strengths of humanity. You'll surrender your passion, your love, passion, and you'll be truly free. I understand the moral restraints, but you'll surrender away your love and passion, your love, passion, your dreams. So you'll surrender away your love, passion.
Is the one that really,
yeah,
because he's doing it for his dream. So maybe this does play into the interview you brought up earlier, where Yukimura used to think that dreams were just desires, but they're kind of something else. There's something more than that. And I think maybe Hakimu sees it the same way, where what Hachi's doing isn't really his dream, it's his desire. That, I guess that's how I would take it. But it is really interesting they're using the language dreams. Like, obviously there's going to be differences when you have translations and stuff from the original text, but if the use of dream here was like intentional, I do think it's interesting that like what Hachi's action is supposed to be what will help him achieve his dream, but Hakimu sees it as him throwing it away in order to be free of it.
The thing is, Hakimu must be speaking from a place of experience. Like, Hakimu has definitely killed people, right? Like, he knows. Like, so he knows that, like, in a way, like, maybe Hakimu has surrendered his dream. Maybe this is like, and I don't know, maybe it's like Hakimu is the same side of the coin where he's doing anything for his dream, his selfish desire of imposing what he believes on the rest of humanity, that we shouldn't go into space. I don't know, like, but I think also something interesting here is that Hamikyu kind of realizes something as soon as Tanabe opens her mouth and says, "If you fire that gun, Hachi, you'll die with him." And then he kind of goes from like emotionless into like a slight smile. And I think at this moment he's like, okay, I may actually survive. He like realizes that this girl is his ticket out. I think he realizes that like there's something there. Like, I think because like Yukimura is very intentional with his extra panels that he's using. So if he spends 2 extra panels on his face, like, there's a change of emotion there.
I definitely think there's a change there that we're supposed to note. I didn't really think of it as, oh, I'm gonna live. I almost think of it as like where he thinks it's kind of cute in this like idea of like, oh, you really think that's going to work kind of thing. Like,
or maybe he just thinks what she is saying is cute. Like, maybe he's thinking back to a time like of his love or something like that. It's like if you fire that gun, you'll die with him. Like, he's like I don't think it's. I mean, like, it's interesting. Sometimes these sound effects are translated, and other times they're not. There seems to be some like weird sound effects there. It looks like a 7 with like a stop, a full stop. I don't know.
That's interesting.
Anyway.
When I saw that, I think I kind of glazed over it a little bit. I thought it was like a little weird question mark.
Yeah,
but you're definitely right. That's like that is probably supposed to be like a sound effect. I almost think of it as like a kind of thing, a little laugh or something, a little exhale. I don't know. But that's an interesting way to think of it. That he thinks this will work because I personally felt like he was just as shocked to not be dead by the end of this as I guess Hachi is that he didn't kill him. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I think actually looking at his other facial expressions, I actually think that you're right on your thought process that he's thinks it's sweet or cute. Yeah.
I think cute in like a mocking way, not not as genuine where it's like, oh, you're
interesting.
Like this isn't a a story. This is real life kind of thing, even though it's a story.
Yeah.
But we have Hachi kind of mock her too on the next page where he's like, oh, like you're buying his shit. Typical Tanabe. She just yammers away and learns absolutely nothing. And like this is cruel stuff that he's saying to her.
Yeah.
And he talks about like love and compassion. You think I need to be saved from myself. And then he says, what a convenient excuse for getting nothing accomplished. Cowards, idiots, traitors, and goddamn fools. They can all be forgiven with love. In like this mocking way where he's not taking it at all seriously. And she starts to cry. And then she kind of what I thought was really interesting here that we have he says it's over. Hakimu basically accepts it by closing his eyes, and even Goro now is saying that Hachi's going too far. He says, "Stupid kid, he's going to stop him," which I don't know if he's saying that in reaction to Tanabe or Hachi. I presumed Hachi.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there is an impact of seeing like Tanabe rendered like this. I don't think we've seen her rendered like this yet. Like, I didn't realize her hair came down like that, and all these things. Mm-hmm. But it is like, I mean, this is a great thing about manga. You get almost the perfect page flip. Sometimes I feel like they don't plan it well enough where you kind of see the page flip earlier. This is almost perfect where you're like, how are they going to stop it? And I did not think they were going to stop it this way.
Did not expect this at all. So the reason I mentioned before about her like always taking this violent approach and like angry approach to stopping Hachi, the one actually ends up working and changing his mind is just this approach of pure compassion for him, and she goes and just kisses him. And I was like, I'm not too thrilled about the kiss, but it has a different meaning, It's not supposed to be like an admittance of, I mean, it is an admittance of love in a lot of ways, but it really is out of like, I don't want to see you do this. Just focus on me kind of way. Like, I'm sure this is happening sooner than she wants it to.
Yeah, I think this is the only Yukimura kiss we've seen, right?
Is that true?
I feel like it is.
Huh.
Like actual romantic kiss.
Yeah, I guess with Thorfinn and Gudrid, it's always been the hug, and I thought Hachi's kind of hair exploding up like
looks like
Gudrid. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking the exact same thing, but I mean, and then Goro has like that Askeladd like wide-eyed look, like what is it? What like and then Thorfinn comes back in to try and kill Thorkel to save him. He's like, you gotta be kidding me, this kid. Yeah. But like, yeah, it doesn't feel super romantic, but it's like, yeah, I like how you brought on the thematic side, but it's also like this is the only way that like the only way to de-escalate Hachi at this point is to kiss him and just like completely blow his brain. Just make all the fuse switches just not work, and I think that's why he just doesn't realize it.
But I thought it was interesting that I almost feel like she realized a flaw in her approach to this, where she was always getting angry at him, and she chooses not violence but compassion in order to show him what he's not understanding.
I think that's a really neat insight. I think and I also like just the thematic thing of just being like, like the compassion one, which I guess we shouldn't be surprised when it's from Yukimura, but it is really interesting. And then I think actually maybe something that was just as interesting, like It's like when, like Goro asks Hakimu what we're going to do. It's like, oh, so want to keep fighting? And he says, I'm tired. And then we don't see anything of like him. Like, we don't see where he goes. Why
they just go their separate ways.
He just disappears. And it's like, yeah. After that, STL tactically abruptly ceased. So, I didn't even clock this. Hold up. The STL abruptly ceased. Yep, and so he just stopped. So that must have really impacted
yeah. I don't know how I feel. What are your thoughts on it?
I think, well, this is the one thing. When you're talking about it and flicking through a page by page, it feels slow, but when you're reading it, it feels so fast.
Yeah,
I didn't actually clock this
the
so
first
fast.
time. I only realized it when I did my notes.
Yeah, and I think, it must be that Hakimu, this kiss, actually kind of showed him something like he is missing this. He's missing compassion. I kind of wish he had it. But it is like a very quick de-escalation. I don't know. I'm interested to see where it goes, at least. I hope the STL just like fade in the background and become nothing. I hope there is something more to it. Yeah. But maybe not. Maybe there's like, they want to focus on more like Locksmith being like a antagonist or something. I don't know.
I had a couple ideas for this. Obviously, one that we know this event was, like, Goro says it earlier, that they're getting desperate. This is kind of like their last chance before the mission proper starts. So I think a lot of ways, like, this is kind of their last chance. They're struggling with, like, financial backing and stuff like that as well. And now he's just kind of, like he says, he's tired. And I think it's not just
lots of his men got knocked out and stuff or something. Like, maybe, like, because of that fact. I mean, they didn't die, though, so maybe not, but...
It is actually... I definitely think it is... It definitely has to do with seeing this moment, because we do have... After Goro asks him, we have this panel of Hakimu, like, all the way at the bottom left of the page, just looking, and then we have the full shot of Tanabe holding Hachi, and then he says, I'm tired, right? So, it's definitely seeing this did something and affected him in some way. I was considering the idea maybe he thinks if somebody, like, if this is the real Hachi, if Hachi has people like this to support him and who love him like this, maybe he's somebody who can do this the right way. But that's a lot of faith to give to Hachi after this one moment, and obviously Tanabe's not going to be coming on the Jupiter mission, we presume. So, I don't know why it would have abruptly stopped. Besides, I guess, him not wanting, him just genuinely being tired of it all. Tired of the violence, like seeing that he's lost sight of something. That's probably the best way I can look at it. So yeah, I hope we do see him again and get more context on what's going on. But because I don't imagine that, like, if it just abruptly ceased, right? Are they just going to let the mission happen and not try it again, or are they changing their approach? I doubt a cause so powerful and with a lot of, like, public opinion almost favoring it, why they would just give it up. I can't see that. So yeah, I'm not too sure where he's gonna go from here. So I hope we see him again.
Yeah, for sure, I do myself.
But right at the end here, we learned that a week later, Hachi got confirmation that he made the crew for the Jupiter mission.
Yahoo!
Let's go. And I think it's...
Were we in any doubt?
Right. Imagine they were just like, no, you didn't make it. And he's like, oh, I guess I'll go back to picking up trash.
Exactly.
But next is chapter 10. And I really adore these last two chapters. They're probably my favorite chapters aside from chapter 1. Because we have... It is almost like another episodic kind of story chapter where it's very self-contained. But it's it's giving Hachi a chance to get some introspection after all the complicated feelings he's been going through, and the culminating in last chapter's ending for him, where he's just kind of flustered. I think he just doesn't really know what he wants, and now this is his chance to be with someone else. We have oh my god, where was his name? Leonov. So he has
Leo, as I will be calling him.
Leo. We have this guy who we could definitely see a lot of Hachi in him, and Hachi has to sort of have this internal grapple with himself. So you want to give some background on Leo?
Yeah, so Leo is basically this Ukrainian bloke who is basically from what seems to be a family of farmers. There is actually one very good pun in this that I deeply enjoyed. And I don't know if it's an original, because I know there's lots of Japanese wordplay that goes really hard but can't be translated to English very easily. That's what I've heard from people who actually know Japanese. I do not. But yeah, so he's just kind of like a typical bloke, but he's also on this mission. Is he? I'm not sure I can't remember if he's also on this mission, but he really just wants to get far away from his family, as far away from like life on Earth. And he's an interesting character because he feels a little soulless in a way, and I think that's what he's kind of like as you said, like a more extreme version of Hachi. Like, he doesn't know where he wants to be. Like, he just wants to be as far away from Earth and as his family as possible. Mm-hmm. And it seemed as like a really far state. And he's shown to be really, really pathetic. It's like, but he just didn't want to, he didn't want to be at home and be a farmer. And, one thing I thought about earlier with the Yukimura quote about, like, it's like a super, I feel like almost a Japanese, or maybe like, I'll just say Japanese for now. It's like a European Western mindset where it's like you are selfish for wanting to do your own dream. You know, when he kind of talks about like him being selfish for wanting to have his own career in manga, like for us, I feel like most parents in the West, they say, hey kid, we want you to be as successful as possible and go off and do as well as you can, you know. And that's like one thing that struck me about, so I have a Malaysian friend who I went to Malaysia with, and one thing that struck me is like there was like two of his cousins who are like 30 years old living with their aunt and grandma still, and it's a sense like in the same house. It's like, oh, home is still community based, it's still family based. You don't necessarily have to move out in the Southeast and East Asian countries. While in the West, like, moving out is expected of you by 23, or you're a loser. That's kind of what the West thinks of it. But here it's like, so it's almost this interesting Japanese mindset. Anyway,
it's like this feeling of owing your family. You're kind of in debt to them. I think that's the mindset he has. You owe them, like they gave you this love, and you kind of that is like foolish to.
Well, they care for you when you're young, and you care for them when you're old, and your unit and your joint family. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily have to go off and do your own crazy things. Now you can, but there's like more of a tradition of staying home. There's not necessarily this stigma against people staying home, I don't think. While I feel like definitely in the UK, at least my parents are like, not pushing me because they don't want me in the house, but I'm like, oh, I want to do my own thing. They're like, we want to encourage you to do your own thing and become, independent. And I think there is something nice about, like, if there's a family business, you are continuing that legacy, which Japan is really well known for. Japan is some of the oldest companies in the world, just because they've had family businesses going on for, hundreds, over 1,000 years, And it's like this similar thing. It's like, oh, I could have continued my family's legacy of tending to these cows, but no, I don't want to, and I wanted to go and do my own thing. He's like, and it's just like, I don't care where, as long as, he doesn't care where he is as long as it's not home. And it feels really, really, just really kind of like, I think later on we just feel like it's pathetic because they get, maybe I'm speeding along here and you can take us back,
sure.
But like, they get hit by this like solar ray, I think, of some sort, or that's what it's kind of suggested as, but they crash land at least, and Leo gets super injured, and Hachi kind of powers through, and then the one of the key moments of this chapter is that as they're trapped in space here, and I mean, one thing to make note is that Hachi's been in so many near-death accidents, and I mean, this comes up again in chapter 11, but I wonder if it's another thing that, like, to his life, because Yukimura had, like, 2 near-death experiences in a car, once when he was younger and once when he was maybe late teens, I think. So maybe, like, lots of these, like, accidents kind of, like, are from his own experience. I think particularly the bike one feels like that could have been a Yukimura moment, but we'll get to that later. But anyway, like, Leo makes this observation. It's just like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mum," and like this makes Hachi exceedingly angry, because I think this is the moment when I feel like Hachi pointing this is like, "Man, Hachi, you're kind of right here. Like, it is really pathetic."
Really? I had a completely different view on this. The way I saw it, it's like this: when being faced with death, realizing where you were wrong.
Yes.
Not in like
maybe
pathetic. I guess in a way it is kind of pathetic, like talking big about how you want to be far away, and then the second you're actually in danger of reality, it kind of sets in. But
yeah,
I definitely had a bit more of a emotional, I feel like, a connection to that moment.
Okay, because so like the reason why I thought it was a bit pathetic is because Hachi says, "Hound, so you're giving up on me to get home to your mother. If you're truly sorry to your mother, get home and tell her that you're sorry. Don't give up now."
I do think Hachi's right there.
I think
that's for sure.
And I think what corroborates this for me is that later on in chapter 11 we see the only thing we hear from Leo's mouth in that chapter, I think, is "I'm bored." Like, he doesn't, like, his Mother's Day, he doesn't say sorry to his mother. He's like, he doesn't seem to grow from this experience at all. And I think that's maybe said somewhere more, but like, you know, it's built upon more. But to me, it's very much like, Hachi's also having a crisis here. It's not like Hachi's being perfectly clairvoyant and he has this breakdown at the end. But I feel like I skipped over a lot. Did you have anything to say before then? I mean, like, it's clear that he's still like rent-free. Tanabe's still rent-free in his head.
That's what I actually really wanted to talk about. I don't know. Have you ever read Vagabond?
I've read up to page to book 10. So I mean, it's taunting myself. I got like 2 more books to buy. But.
Okay, yeah, you're quite far into it. So for those who aren't too familiar with Vagabond, this isn't very spoilerish, but there's Vagabond is essentially about this samurai who wants to become stronger, and that's kind of like his whole journey is about discovering what strength is and kind of growing through that. And there's a character, Otsu, who is this girl who loves him so much, but he keeps leaving her behind in pursuit of this strength. And at some point, he starts to just think about her, and he can't figure out why. And he's not realizing that she's more important until it's sort of too late for him. That's what this made me think of a lot, where the thought of love is kind of distracting him, and he thinks it's almost a bad thing when it really isn't, and it's just because that's something that's really genuinely important.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't make the Vagabond connection, but I mean, Vagabond is one of those stories. I think it's another one of those manga that's unfairly put next to Berserk or Vinland Saga, because it's actually completely different, in my opinion, to vibe and intention and focus to those other 2 series. It's just like, oh, it's kind of set in medieval times. It's Seinen. As Berserk, Vagabond, Vinland Saga.
Yeah, it's not to say anything about the quality, of course.
No, but like... But I just want to tangent about Vagabond a little bit, because I don't get to talk about it often. But it is definitely like, I like how your point is that, and I definitely kind of I'm a little bit spoiled on what I think I know vaguely what happens, and I want to read more of it, because apparently the best arc is from yet to read. But it is like, anyway, if anybody wants to go read it, it's very fascinating. It's definitely got some of the most long, intense, and like emotionally absorbing fights I think I've ever read. That's probably the best way to put it. It's not hype. It's not, whoa, this is the coolest thing ever. It's like you will literally have two guys standing in the rain for like 10 chapters, mind gaming each other. But at the end of it, you'll feel so drained because you're like, dude, I had to flip through all those pages. And like, it feels like nothing happened, but in the best way possible. And I don't mean that. I mean that's why it's great. Not that is bad because it feels like nothing happened. Anyway, tangent over from me. Sorry.
The point is that I guess that both of them kind of deal with this idea that losing track of what's really important. And
and that's a really interesting thing, like, because that is like, it's amazing how like fast Planetes communicates this in like however many chapters, and how long Vagabond on the opposite way takes, how long it takes to convey its message, and it's in it, and it's kind of a similar vibe of like really aiming towards your goal and like how do you pursue it. Now, Vagabond's a little bit more nebulous in it, where it's like strength. What does it mean to be strong? Well, Hachi's very direct. It's like, I just want to get on this thing to Jupiter. But I like you bring up the Otsu and all that stuff. It's really, really, really good.
Yeah, it's like I would say Vagabond has like the strength of it draws it out for a reason, and then this story is very direct about it for a reason. They both have their reasons.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, definitely nothing, I guess, wrong with that. But so yeah, we have Leonov gravely injured, and Hachi's the one trying to take him. Like, their ship literally like just explodes, which from like, I think the engine was still on or something. They didn't have a choice. That's actually really.
Oh, the AI failed. Okay, this is interesting. So it must have been struck by a sudden solar storm, and before the observatory could put out an alert, the sun AI failed, but wouldn't have mattered anyway because the sensors were already dead from the debris impact. None of it could have been avoided. Yeah, that's interesting. It's like there's almost like sometimes everything goes wrong and you can do nothing about it.
Well, here's what I think the reason is that Yukimura adds to this, like, none of it could have been avoided, because I think he reiterates that later too. I think the idea is that no, this could have been avoided if you didn't go here. Like,
interesting.
I feel like that's what it really is about. Like, combined with the Tanabe stuff and losing track of compassion, and like the astronaut who they found in the coffin, who went into space, died of radiation, and then had his body left up there. That kind of thing. It's like, no, there is a choice. Then the choice is to not go there. That's how I interpreted it. Where Hachi's so far in, he feels like he doesn't have a choice. That there was no way to avoid it.
Interesting. I mean, so one thing I do really love about this chapter is that actually, opposed to what Planetes normally does, it takes a lot of time. You know, detailing, the situation they're in. We've got this much oxygen left. I'm taking steps. I'm moving along. Like, it takes a good 10 pages for them to get in, like, of them just kind of wandering along, having different internal thoughts and going through different motions and stuff like that. And I really like its diligence to that. To your point of, like, this, like, it happening and they couldn't have done anything, I like that reading. Maybe another reading also, which I thought of it has something to do with that, almost like comment about how there's no God in space, or, but then, like, this is in chapter 13 when Hachi's like, where's this quote from? There's no God in space, but then Leo says later, no, God was with you because you didn't get crippled like me or put in a hospital. And I think that's another, I guess, interesting thing is like God, like only the universe and fate could have decided them getting crashed there in a way.
I almost wonder that's a good thing to bring up, and I almost wonder if in a sense, like, why was God with Hachi but not Leo? And in your reading of it, that I'm starting to become more inclined to, of like the reading where he's kind of pathetic for it, I feel like it's almost like passing judgment. Judgment was passed on both of them, and Leo was somebody who wasn't worthy of it, because he starts groveling when he's hurt, but then when he's back, he's just thinking about going to space again. And finding his way back. Whereas Hachi, this is his moment where he realizes how he feels, and he finally asks for help.
Yeah. Yeah, I had no other choice. I have no other choice. There's no other way. What I need is more than you guys. I need to be relentless. And then, like, he's almost saying, like,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, like, and he goes through everybody. He goes, like, his younger brother, his mother. He sees his dad. He sees, his crewmates, and then he sees Tanabe. I think maybe the weirdest thing with Tanabe for me, and the reason why I found her introduction so weird to deal with, is because after the first 5 chapters setting everybody up, like, if Tanabe was in those first 5 chapters, I'd be more inclined. But because we've got Fee and Yuri there, I'm like, Fee and Yuri are the boys,
Yeah, I
they're
feel
the
like
crew.
they've lost their kind of value.
They've snubbed a bit.
I want to talk about this moment a bit more, but I do want to talk about what you're saying. I almost feel like why couldn't this be a role that, like, the character in Fee's place could do? Why does Fee have to be a separate character from Tanabe? Not just because, like, they're both women, but the idea of, like, we saw Fee kind of had a bit less importance going on with her, and she did butt heads with Hachi a little bit, but Tanabe was introduced kind of more for the sole purpose of being this spreader of compassion. I don't know. It feels like you said, they've kind of a bit, I don't know, sight's been kind of lost on them, especially in this volume.
I mean, one thing I do like about Fee is that Fee is a mother and not a woman there just to be a romantic interest. It would feel a little bit, I know, like, more tropey, just to be like, oh, we've got 2 guys and a girl, so that means the girl has to be a love interest of one of the guys. I kind of like how they're their own independent thing. But one character, I mean, maybe it doesn't work with the age, and maybe this is like Yukimura, like, didn't plan this out as much as he could have, maybe to make it as efficient. But maybe Nono, if Nono wasn't like 13 years old, but instead 20 years old, and like Nono came aboard, I mean, like, we've already been introduced to Nono. I'm sure you could write some reason to be like, oh yeah, she wanted to be a space cadet and learn about space, and she wants to see how far she can push herself as a Lunarian or whatever she is. Like, you've already had that introductory chapter, and you bring her back in. I don't know if Nono is going to be like turn up again. Maybe is she just one and done character? Maybe.
Yeah, I know I said last video that I think she will, but now I'm hesitant. I think part of that was probably a bit subconscious because I had seen the cover of Volume 2, and I think it's definitely Tanabe on the cover of it, and I think in my subconscious I assumed that was Nono.
Yeah,
true. And that's probably why I was so insistent that she'd probably come back. But that's how I at least put together, because now that I've read those chapters again and I've read this volume, I don't think she will.
Yeah.
But I think actually maybe it isn't the fault of the narrative that Fee and Yuri aren't really getting focused, because we are supposed to be going through this with Hachi where he's losing sight of what's important to him. So I think the fact that they've gotten less focus is because Hachi isn't focusing on them, but they're not willing to invade his world like Tanabe is. True.
Yeah. They're willing to let him. I guess they're more adults, and they're just like, oh, the young guy will figure it out. While, like, I mean, there's I feel like this could be cleaned up, and I'm sure in maybe the anime there are extra things like Yuma would love to clean up and kind of. I actually really want to watch the anime after this. I actually don't. I've seen screenshots of the anime, and I think it doesn't look nearly as good as the manga. I think the manga looks so much better, but I do want to see the story changes and stuff like that. And mind you, seeing anime screenshots is never like a good way to judge an anime, because you have to get the whole vibe of it. But I mean, that's just more to say how good the art is in the manga compared to the anime, just looking very, very standard. I mean, it's also 2003 or whatever, right? They have,
and adapting a very niche work as well.
Yeah, exactly. So their time and equipment and dare I say budget may not be as focused. But I mean, this seems like a pretty successful manga. So anyway,
yeah, it's not super niche, but I get what you mean. But go for it.
I love how they're walking through space and you get time to really dwell on these things. And like he's like, oh, we've got so much time, and Leo kind of almost thinks he's going to pass out. And then Hachi has this, they had the moment we talked about before, and he's like getting really mad. He's like, he was going to and I think this is another moment where initially I thought is Hachi going to have that empathy inside his heart? And he clearly does. It is true.
Yeah.
Because a wise man, and they kind of mentioned this before, Hachi could have just left him and then be like, oh, I'll come back for you later, and leave it more likely that Hachi would survive, but also for Leo to die. Instead, Hachi's like, no, we got to do it both together because we both got to survive.
Yeah, there is some compassion in there, but I also think it's a lot of anger at him for feeling the way he does, kind of making him own it in a way.
Maybe, but yeah, I don't know, but maybe this is a way that like almost God smiles upon him. Like they fall over. I mean, Yukimura does this great thing where he shows how small and insignificant their footprints. Like he has a big focus on footprints this chapter, which looks beautiful, and then we get this. And I mean, I never really thought Hachi was going to die, but it was so cool to see how he was saved. Like, here we come down, and it's not Yuri, it's not Fee, it's straight away, we get a picture, oh my word, I just completely blanked on it, Tanabe, looking at him and be like, are you alright? And, like, he gets so mad at this, like, and I didn't clock this the first time, because I didn't really read it, I guess. But is he hurt? Like, why we live alone and we die alone. That's us. And I wonder if it's almost like the guy who died in space, like wanted to die one with space in the end in chapter 3, whatever his name, that sergeant dude, that like space vet. It's like this is like the ultimate repudiation of what Hachi said in chapter 7 in Tanabe's first inclusions, like, we die alone, leave me alone, let me be alone. He's told his alter ego to leave him alone. He's told everybody to leave him alone because this is what he does. And yet, what will he not do? He won't leave his space cadet mate or his space mate alone.
Yeah,
and then he gets really, really upset that someone saves him, but also overwhelmingly overjoyed that a person he loves and a person that loves him also won't leave him alone. And it's kind of like they came out of him because they loved him and cared for him and had compassion on him. And it's just like he just realizes that, and he's like, why? Just leave me alone. Like, why did you come here to save us? Why are you so good to me?
Yeah.
You know, it's like he knows he's a jerk. It's like this is the twisting point of like he's now going up on his arc, you know.
I like how when he says, "Why are you so good to me?" he has like that pause there, like he takes a second to think about it. It's like, why are you so like good to me? Like he's almost like piecing it together as he's speaking.
And
I do love his like kind of breakdown here, where he finally gives in and asks for help.
Yeah, and it's like his mother is waiting for him to come home, and Tanabe doesn't say anything, but she just gives this warm smile and says, "All right, let's take him inside." And then you get this lovely picture of like 5 astronauts in space helping, you know, another astronaut and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like this Hachi once again echoes Thorfinn ways, like he's willing to do evil things, and Thorfinn is more extreme, of course, because Thorfinn has done so much stuff without remorse, and he feels like he shouldn't be like Thorfinn almost. You know what? Like I hate to bring it up again, but I can almost see like Thorfinn saying this to Gudrid at some point. It's like, why do you like me? Why are you so good to me? Like, because that's how Thorfinn thinks about himself. And I don't know. Maybe this is like because Yukimura really wanted to create a character in Thorfinn that is like actually really bad and diabolical and someone you wouldn't want to feel for in a way or root for. And I kind of feel like he's trying to do with that with Hachi here, but doesn't go as fully into it.
Yeah, I think he still wants us to
flavor.
Look at Hachi the same way that Tanabe does, where we kind of have this belief in him no matter what. Because I definitely never felt as like, you know, because when I first went through Vinland Saga, I feel like Thorfinn got me to the point where I almost like had no faith in him. Even though obviously he's the main character, he's going to grow at some point, but it makes you think so many times that this time he'll learn, but he doesn't. And I feel like they don't really, and I think that really is based on how focused and direct and streamlined this story is. I don't think we have time to lose faith in him, because we went from being like in chapter 5, oh yeah, Hachi, let's go, to to this volume where like, oh, Hachi, what are you doing? And then by the end of this volume, it's like, all right, Hachi, like, I believe in you again, kind of thing. It's very fast. Let's see. Do I have anything else I want to say about this chapter? I guess, yeah, this is just kind of like his moment, I guess, where he kind of gets it now. And
Yeah.
it's almost like because it kind of happens in two parts. Next chapter is where he kind of gets it, but this is where he kind of reached his breaking point.
Yes.
And the like sort of transformation has begun. But he kind of still needs to process it, and that's what chapter 11 is really about.
And I love how I guess how like in retrospect I love the arc is actually being really, really efficient. While it is really fast, it's actually still like reiterating points, pushing them again, not sweeping him through these. Particularly these last two, I think this is why we like these last two chapters so much, because it doesn't push him through it super quickly. Like, we get a sprinkling of it here, and then, you know, like, of that vision of all his friends and family and Tanabe, and then we get a big whammy of this in chapter 11, like, coming more full force. And anyway, you go ahead and describe what happens in... But before we do, actually, I want to say, this is my favorite piece of art, of Feed the Smoker. I don't know why I like it so much. Do you have the book?
Yep.
I think you do.
Yep.
Like, holding the... I don't know why, it's just so cool to me. I don't know, it's like her nonchalant. Like, I think there's something, like, to me in my brain that's like, it works well, but it shouldn't work with someone smoking in a spacesuit. That feels like a really stupid thing to do, but I really like it. Anyway, I just like the background, and of course we get more colored pages and another great colored page, which I'm sure you talk about, which is
I really like the colored page here. Yeah.
Oh, the name is Rush. Is in Cyrillic.
Yes, I really wanted to like Google Translate. Like
I translated everything else.
Oh, you did?
I translated everything else. But take us through the early parts of this while I translate it.
So after I guess everything that's been going on, we have kind of like a little break here where the whole family is back in Japan. We have Hachi's dad here. I was very shocked to see that he was just at the house, because he was like, after the last phone call with his wife, it seemed like he was just going to be up there for longer without seeing her. But he's back here, and so is Hachi. But let's see. But yeah, she talks about being like thankful that they're home, and we have her say both of our kids are just like you, when talking to him. That they see Kizaru's rocket go, and like Goro hasn't probably seen him in a while, so he's like impressed, like, oh, like, look at it go, it's flying straight now, even though like we saw that in chapter 4 that he figured it out. But we could see them growing, and then but before we get to see him again, we have Hachi back with his Viking shirt. I didn't even think about that until now.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed this. I don't know what... It looks like a baseball jersey of some sort, but I really love it. Like, I wonder if, like... I don't know why Vikings, you know...
Yeah.
And, like, it's like... We like the Soy Jack meme of pointing at the Beyond Burger sign, where it's like, oh, Viking, Vinland Saga,
yeah,
Viking, like, you know, they go, oh!
I didn't even think about it.
Yeah, the name of this chapter is Thank You.
I figured that's what it meant.
Google Translate.
Because I remember when the... I guess it's getting a bit far ahead, but when the mother was crying, that's what she was saying to him. So that's what I thought it was.
True. Yeah. And I mean, I like these small moments when they're talking about, you know, like the small things, but then also like, oh, you got a bold spot. It's just like a nice little human moment of like two individuals like connecting and stuff. And it's one of those like just good stuff you're sprinkling in, and it just gives a more natural feeling to the dialogue. That's really fun.
And I feel like it makes their relationship very believable, like, because he seemed pretty like not too good to her with these phone calls and not coming home and just like not being present. But you could see like this love there between them despite all that.
For sure. For
But,
sure.
Yeah, they talk about how like the whole family is home, which is like they haven't had that. Like I think Hachi hadn't even seen his dad in 5 years, so never mind like how long has it been since they've all been home together.
Yeah, it's been really long. And I love the focus on the portcullets. They come up again later on, but it's like
Yeah.
they start fighting over them. It's like, oh, 4 pieces per person, or 3 pieces per person. It's like, oh, is he sleeping? Or yeah, like he's really like Hachi's going through a lot of stuff. He's thinking a lot. And then he has this quote which I kind of mentioned earlier. It's like, who said there's no God in space? Was it Gagarin? Perhaps not. And I'll have a quick check now who Gagarin is, but Gagarin. I mean, yeah, and I just
yeah.
Okay, Yuri Gagarin is the Soviet cosmonaut.
Yeah, definitely wasn't a character.
Huh.
I don't think he heard it from
astronaut.
somebody. I think he was the one who said it. After the incident in chapter 2, or was it 3? No, it was 2. It was 2.
Who said it? So Yuri said that.
Oh, was it Yuri who said it to him?
No, but who are you saying? No God in space. Huh. I see no God up here. Yuri Gagarin, 1961.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what it's referring to.
So yeah, there's an astronaut, and I like Yukimura's doing his reading. It's always nice to be like, yes, this is our real world with real astronauts. Maybe focus a bit too much on astronauts that would have been known in the 40 years that had actually passed. But hey, I like the historical side of things. Always nice. And then we see Leo in bed, and we never see his face fully. We just see the back of his head and his beard.
Yeah, it's definitely very sad. Like he had a pretty happy expression when we first met him. He was he seemed like a nice guy that you'd want to have a chat with. And now he's just kind of lost.
I just saw a page. I can't believe I missed this. So he's got this sad look, and then we flip the page to 446. Are you on this?
Yes.
And then we have Hachi there, and then he sees himself
Oh my
looking away
God!
saying, it's boring here. And then it goes back to, I completely didn't realize this. Oh my word, that changes everything. Well, not everything.
Yeah, because as you were telling me, as you were pointing this out, I was like, when did he get a headband?
Yeah. I must leave. I want to climb into that brand new ship and travel to distant smart world. Somewhere, not here. No, I mean somewhere too far to. Interesting. I think this just bolsters your theory that or your point that he's Hachi is seeing himself in Leo here, and it's not a good thing, and it's kind of building on from that last chapter for them being him being a mirror and Yuri, and Leo being the end conclusion of Hachi in this way, and then Hachi gets this point where, and I'll get the translation out. So he gets outside the room, and he meets the mother, and let me go back, and it's very much he's just Mr. Hoshino, you're Mr. Hoshino, aren't you? I've heard about you from my son. And she's saying this all in Cyrillic. So, Russian or Ukrainian, I won't be able to tell the difference. I'd like to assume it's Ukrainian, but maybe it's Russian because it's Soviet inspired.
I know Hachi calls it Russian later, but that could just be something he's kind of ignorant to.
Maybe. Anyway, regardless, it's kind of she's just being very thankful, and she's traveled all the way out here. The mother from the cow farm. Oh, I didn't even talk about the pun from the previous chapter. My favorite pun is it was a coward cow herd. He's saying, "Oh, you're a coward cow herd." He's a coward who wants to go cow herd. Anyway, I just never considered that pun before, it was really smart translation job. Well done, whoever did this. And so to continue on with the translation here, she then says, she's like, "Oh, I am Leo's mother," and then she says, "I know that you are carrying my son. What would the herd be with? What would the herd be with him if you were not there?" It's a bit of an odd translation. It could be a Google translation, but when it says the herd, it means like the cow herd. Like, what would happen to the cow herd if you were not there? And then the final one is thank you very much, thank you. And so that's exactly what you meant. It's like that's the title of this chapter.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you have anything more to build on there.
I do have. I guess I'm talking real quick about, again, like Hachi seeing himself in Leonov, because he says a bit later that, like, when he's talking to his mom, he's kind of opening up to her that, like, he feels like that could have been me in the hospital room, right? Like, why me? Why am I okay? And in the sense where, like, yes, he sees it, and he sees as Leo is, like, looking back to space and, like, not even appreciating the fact that he's back here. He kind of I think he's finally seeing here the flaw that he has of, like, being so relentless towards his dream or whatever. I think he sees Leo losing sight of the importance of the fact that he's here. And I think Hachi's finally seeing that. I think it's more than just, like, I'm seeing myself dreaming here through Leo. It's also, like, I see the mistakes I'm making.
Yeah, and I think it's that comment. It's like, it's so rare for them to all be home together, and they should enjoy it together, you know? So,
And I guess with the mom, there is something I also want to say here. Obviously, like, with Yukimura, like, language is a very important thing, especially with the current Vinland Saga arc, and I really love how that even here you could see how much he respects the idea that even without understanding how emotion can be communicated through, like, expression and how words are being said, you know, without being able to really understand what's being said to, like, she's thanking him. And I just think that's cool, you know, that even back here, like, most mangaka are going to be writing, like, Cyrillic for this. Like, I want to see the original
Japanese for it. Yeah,
I'm not sure. I'm wondering if it's, like, you know, if it is written in Cyrillic in the original text. I mean, the font is different, so I almost assume that maybe they kept it from the original text. But I feel like most mangaka wouldn't do that, and it's a very Yukimura thing to do.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, you want to talk about the return of our boy Kyutaro?
Oh, yeah, he's a Chad now. He's back at it. Yeah. He's tall. I mean, so I don't know. Okay, I don't know if this is true for you, but I swear younger brothers are always taller. I feel like as the longer you go down the line of brothers, the taller they get, and they're giants at the end of it. I feel like this is my confirmation bias, but it's, like, true for so many of my mates. Like, the younger brother's the taller one. I'm not sure if you agree with that at all.
I don't have any brothers personally, so I can't speak to it.
But you know friends that have, like, younger brothers?
Yeah, and now that I think about it, you might be right.
It's like the genes somehow get refined as they go down the pool. You know, it's like, hey, we've made one guy, okay. Now, I don't know what happens. Maybe it's just the burden of being the eldest child. I don't know. I don't know how this works, but I think I've definitely met people that this is not true for. But comment down below if you know younger brothers that are taller. We need to get that engagement, because people who are 2 hours and 42 minutes into this
clearly not engaged enough.
Yeah, clearly not engaged enough. Come on, people. Like, were there any comments on the last one? Pitiful. Come on, people. Get some comments in there.
There were.
Oh, were there? Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, mostly from people I think that I know, though. Not like
okay. From Papa Mir, being like, get in there, son. Get in the views.
Shout outs to Dad.
Shout outs to Papa.
So we have the reintroduction of Kyutaro here, and Hachi doesn't even recognize him, and then we have them at the table. And you have, like, all this
response.
Yeah.
I'm your brother, I think.
Yeah. But I love, like, the banter they have here while well, the mom is just trying to genuinely ask Hachi, like, "Are you okay? Like something seems off," and like she's trying to, have a genuine conversation with him, and they're just like arguing over who gets to eat, like the chicken cutlets or whatever. And I just thought that was funny.
187 centimeters. So for those who you don't know, it's probably about around like 8'2", 8'3". So that's pretty tall. I assume like the rest of these people are like 5'9" max. So definitely a lot taller. So yeah, but yeah, I too love the band. It gives it feels like a very family home. Yukimura writing from his experience kind of deal. Good fun.
Yeah.
And then he has this conversation with his mum about Leo, and Leo is bothering him. Like the idea of Leo, but it's like I think part maybe what it is like because he says it here. He says, it could be me in that bed instead of him. Like he's almost envisioning if he was in this bed, not that like. Also that Leo is a parallel to him, but also that like he could be in that bed, and what would his response be? Would he want to be with his family? Would he be like, oh, this is boring, and he's tired of this, and he wants to go up in space?
Yeah.
Like there's almost this conviction there, and his mother's like, oh, you shouldn't worry so much. It's like, and then like Hachi does, and this is probably my most like what I least like about him. It's like, and I didn't like this in chapter 4, and I don't like it now. How dismissive and gatekeeping he is about being an astronaut. He's like, oh, you're not an astronaut, you wouldn't know. And then she retorts back like, well, I'm the wife of an astronaut, so if anybody wouldn't know, it's me, kind of deal. And I kind of like this, kind of like making you shut up. And it's like Leo was a great astronaut, and what do great astronauts do when they don't have space anymore? It's like. I think maybe like Hachi's just thinking of his own life and be like, what would I do if I didn't have space? If I had to leave it behind? And what do I have apart from space? Now I think I'm figuring out like what do I have apart from space? I wouldn't be in space anymore. I wouldn't be in space. I wouldn't be doing what I dreamed of doing. What my dream is. It's like, and then the mum says, what does he do? Oh, he comes back home. And it's like this feeling. It's so simple. It's like,
yep.
And it's like. That means I don't care where he is, as long as he doesn't forget how great my pork cutlet is. And then she's talking about Goro, of course.
Yeah.
Or maybe him as well. But I think Goro is the one because we're talking about the pork cutlet. It's like...
Yeah, I think she is kind of focused a bit on Goro there.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched the show Invincible or read the comic?
Yeah, just the show's first season.
All right, good. In the first season, there's like a moment where, oh my god, why am I forgetting his name? The main character,
Mr. Invincible. I forgot his name.
Mr. Invincible.
Mr. Invincible. Let's call him that.
Think
Omni-Man,
That's
right?
what it is.
Oh yeah, it's Marcus. Marcus.
It's just Mark, I think. But we have Mark and his mom have a little conversation on their porch, just like this, where like he talks about like.
Yeah, his name's
how
Mark,
like it's superhero stuff you can't understand, and she's like, "No, I'm your mom." Like, I do understand.
I know. Yeah,
you
don't mess with the
like
mom. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, and I think to me it was so simple, but I think to me it's so simple to understand what she is saying in this moment. But I do like the idea of like she's saying something that seems, if you've experienced it, is really obvious, and it's like. It's simple, isn't it? Like he doesn't, and I think she's a real queen here because she's like, you can go off and do your own thing. I'll be home waiting for you. Just don't forget about home. Exactly. That's the main thing. That's all she's saying. Just don't forget about home. Don't forget where your home is. And I think, and then she retorts as the hilarious thing, which kind of buys into the whole thing that Hachi's not like the most academic person. Like he's flunked all his tests. He's only getting into this program because he's really physically able. You only ever see him train physical. You don't ever see him like study and stuff. And she's like, "Hey, you'll keep thinking about it because you're not so smart." and it's just like oh, caring mother. I'll slap you around with the sass, which I think is hilarious.
But it's all like seeing Leo like that. It's just making him think. And he's starting to figure it out, but like he's still having trouble and saying that it's hard. And then we have the chapter continuing, and we get one more glimpse of his like mirror double here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is probably the appearance that made me the most confused as to why this happened for him.
Yeah.
But he's like in like this void, and I was happy to see he immediately called out for Yuri and Fee.
Mm-hmm.
And
True.
I think this is exactly actually at the beginning of chapter 5 what we see. Is this the same words? Because it looks the same. Saying, let's see.
I'm going back. Yeah, he says, Fee, Yuri, what are your positions?
Yeah, same thing.
Where are you guys? Give me your location. Same thing. Answer me. Yeah, it's almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, answer me. Where are you guys? Answer me. Anyone hear me? Yeah, it's almost the same reaction.
So I think this is him facing that moment again the right way and finding the right solution. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it right now. But when he calls out to them, we have the double answer instead. And he says, no one's here. There's only you and me in all this space. It's a lovely game we play. I'm glad you invented it. So again, like he made this up to cope, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But when Hachi turns around, he sees himself like dead instead. He sees like a corpse in the suit. And oh man, I don't know. This really is the one I'm struggling with the most as to what Yukimura is trying to get across with this one.
I think it's because we've had certain characters that popped in the story, and all of them are like ways Hachi could go down the wrong path. Mm-hmm. And this is Hachi seeing himself as a dead corpse, as that dead corpse from 50 years ago, floating in space because he wants to be in space so much, and he's just can't live without space. And it's kind of like, you're alone. This is all that matters. This is space. Stay with me. And interesting, this character once again has the helmet on, and it's like, who was it that said there is no God in space? For you to live out here beyond God, you are going to be able to stronger than man was meant to be. It's just kind of like, I mean, this is the third time this chapter, this kind of quote has been brought up. But it's like, you need to become stronger. It's not the Sigma grind set, but almost like you have to like screw the rest of the world, abandon your humanity, and become stronger than it. That's kind of what it's reiterating. And then, interesting and weirdly, and reminds me of a certain chapter in Vinland Saga where he just starts melting away. It's like, don't forget, something happened to you when you touched the engine, which I think is really interesting. That's brought up again. He's like, hey, don't leave me. I can't survive without you. And it's interesting. Like, this is Hachi's only thing, and it's like finally the double lets him go and is alone, and then there's a lot there. Like, I mean, finally Hachi feels alone. Like, even like he has no one, not even himself.
Yeah, I think this is the double disappearing and leaving Hachi alone is the thing I really wanted to dissect here, because I think the way I'm thinking about it now is that Hachi's on the path to kind of a realization of how to handle his pain and insecurities and loneliness. And I don't think he realizes it just yet why it's happening, but he doesn't need the double anymore. Not because he doesn't need anybody, but because I think he's figured out like what's really important and what he really needs, which is the people who care about him.
And I think it's also disintegrating because he doesn't have an inner conflict anymore. He's like realizing what it means to be alone, and he's kind of like merging. He's single now.
He's given up that coping mechanism, and now he's actually embracing that loneliness that he kind of created this thing to combat.
True, that's a great idea. Yeah, like his trauma from being stopped in space created this like extra person so he wouldn't feel alone in these times of dire situation. and now it's kind of being as pushed back because he kind of. Well, I mean, at the moment he's kind of thinking, oh, he's not alone, but that kind of becomes more obvious later on. Again, yeah, and classic Hachi. He wakes up, it's a nightmare. He wants to go get a beer or something, but his dad's drunk all 13 cans. Was it 12 cans?
Yes, I think it was 12.
Good grief, typical dad. Am I right? This is the Evangelion moment, right? Where I'm forgetting her name. But the mother that takes Shinji in or whatever drinks all the cans of Coke is like probably the same brand or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, so Hachi's speeding back on his bicycle, no helmet. What a Chad! Don't be like him. Always wear a helmet, folks, when you're riding your bike. Speeding down the lane, and this is one of those things where, like, once again, you're like, Hachi, you're saying the same points again and again. You know. Like, and he's coming at a different angle, and this took a little bit of time for me to kind of put it all together. Because I think the great thing about talking about this for almost 3 hours with you is that you see these strands and you're able to kind of knot it together. And so I hope that people who listened, I'm kind of doing this in real time despite having notes, but like you are putting it together. But he makes this point which I think is really like almost like the strong man, the steel man version of this argument. It's like anything can stay alive. A worm can stay alive. All you do is eat, sleep, drink beer, all this stuff. And then the people on the front line, they invented automobiles, airplanes, spaceships. The future's made by people who aren't afraid to die, right? The reason why we can stand these days is because you hope tomorrow won't be as bad, because astronauts like us are exploring space and risking our lives, defying reality in pursuit of our dreams. And then he kind of looks up at the stars and then looks down like he believes, like he has this moment of doubt, like he doesn't believe it anymore. Yeah. Is this your reading of the situation?
Yeah, that's the exact way I see it. I think he's finally found value in life. He isn't willing to just die anymore, and it's kind of he's lost that selfish I'll live in space and die in space, and that's exactly how I want it to be. I have no problem with that. And now I think this is finally a moment. He's like, am I really, like when he's just risking my life at the end here, it's him finally thinking like, am I really okay with dying and losing my life, Mm-hmm. And then you have this truck come here, and he like swerves to avoid it, and then he goes like flying over the guardrail into the lake below.
Mm-hmm. The light of God approaches him, but it's not heaven. It's a big truck, and he goes at it. And I kind of like how he's having these internal thoughts in like the midnight sky, because often when like if you've ever like when sometimes you're home and you just go on like maybe a warm evening and just go and walk around at night, like I'm not sure if you've ever done this or like see a new place and just want to go walk around and like or just cycle around or like just like just vibe in the nighttime, and then you get like lots of these thoughts when you're just with yourself and you're really kind of thinking and stuff. Maybe that's the vibe I'm thinking, but yeah.
I think it's interesting that when we had that flashback in chapter 2, we had a glimpse back at Hachi when he was younger. He was riding his bike and looking up at the moon, right? And now we have him. Wait, what was that?
I'm having a look back at this chapter 2. Oh my word, the art is so much like the line art is so less good.
I know.
It's still really good, but just like Hachi's blonde hair. Oh my days, we have come far, folks. We have come so far.
He's looking up at the stars while riding his bike and dreaming up there. And now we have him riding his bike again after all of this, and now he's looking down and thinking about his place here, I guess, and like the value of life. He's I guess his priorities has changed so much. What he thinks about has changed so much. He's not looking up anymore. He's introspective, looking down.
Yeah, interesting. That's a super interesting point. Yeah, I mean, and I mean, he falls off this cliff, and I said before, but I think it's pretty clear that this is I don't know, maybe not really clear, but like the Yukimura does talk about like having accidents as a child, so I think this kind of links in there, close contact with the car, and then he this is actually beautiful page from like, how is he going to survive with this? He's just flown off, but he hits the water, and then it has the like water feeling exactly like space, like how it's depicted, just with bubbles. It's you've read the Attack on Titan manga. I think it's in the anime at this point as well. It's like the Ymir falling in the tree.
Yes.
Yeah. Isayama fraud again, copying Yukimura's work. Can't believe it. We know you're good friends, but plagiarism is not okay. Well, I don't know. Anyway, and then we get this beautiful art style of like it's like, of course it reminds me of the chapter of 154 of the soldier going to Valhalla in Sea War, but like the art is less detailed. It's like more outliney. It's like more nothingness, and this is like when the moment hits him. Like, what? Nothing? Am I dead? Maybe not. I'm alive. I know, but it's nothing. Alone. Right. This is what I want. I need to live life here, alone. It's like it's like he doesn't have his alter ego anymore. He doesn't have his double. He doesn't have anybody. He is truly alone.
Yeah.
In effectively space, and then a light comes, and then it's like this like door opening to the light, and interesting. Like initially, like he said, Fi and Yuri. Here he says Tanabe again. And the beautiful visual of him getting cracked apart and like destroyed, and I was really confused by like he's this dusty man, and then he like sees all his friends and family and everybody in this beautiful color. So this hit me like a truck. I loved it so much. And then it expands. It goes further out from the stars, and then you see a universe. You see like a galaxy. Big Bang. Oh my god! And then you go further out, and then you see this whole galaxy. And to me, like, I've never done psychedelic drugs, but from hearing, people talk about it, this feels exactly like what I'd think an ego death would look like. Now, I'm not saying that Yukimura's done this stuff. I know Japan's incredibly tight on their drug laws, and I don't think in 2000, this guy would have probably done anything. Maybe he has, but this really feels like an ego death to me. Like, he feels so small and insignificant. He breaks apart, realizes that what matters is all these people in this collage that's been made, and you just zoom out on the universe. And every single time I've heard someone talk about psychedelics and an ego death, you just zoom out on this universe, and you just realize how small, insignificant you are, and how much you should just care and take. Don't take for granted the beautiful small things in life. I'm not sure if you can comment on that, if you've had any experiences with psychedelics or anything like that.
No, nothing direct enough to expand on that, I think. But the idea of the ego death is definitely exactly what I would think here. This is him just kind of realizing, like, the fact that it's the like dust of him or whatever that's like expanding into all of this. It's like he's realizing at his core who he is, what matters to him. That was the way I kind of interpreted it.
Interesting. Yeah. And it's interesting that he's breaking away the same way that his alter ego is. And it's really cool, like, everybody's in this panel, and I think Yukimura actually redrew Nono from this.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, that is, we haven't seen her in a good art style.
Yeah,
she looks very different here. I thought it was interesting that Hakimu's in here too, and the corpse.
Yeah, interesting.
And Leo up there too. I guess it's not just people that are. That's interesting.
It's everybody. It's everything.
It really is.
It's the explosion on the moon. It's all the spaceships.
Yeah.
It's Earth, and it's everything. And then he has this realization at the end, and this is what actually took me the long time. He kind of reaches out of Earth. He gets pulled by someone out of by one of the truckmen, and he says, "Swallow a lot of water." He's got a bath, and he's like half, and then he says, "Is that space? Was I looking at that? Was I looking at?" What was I looking at before? Space? What was I before today? And he kind of looks back up and he says, "Oh, I see. It's so simple. I'm already there."
It's that realization that Yuri came to.
Yeah, everybody in this world, every world everybody, space holds everything. I'm already here. We're already here. And he kind of says, oh, then the guy says, did you hit your head or something, mister? And then he says, thank you to... He's looking up at the galaxy. And I think it's like a double meaning of the thank you. Saying thank you for saving my life, of course. But also, thank you for breaking my ego space. And this really confused me because I'm like, why are we going over the same thing that Yuri is going over here? Yep. And like literally reading this chapter for the third time, I think I finally got it. It's like, here, Hachi is like, what happens when I'm done with space? What happens when I'm over and my dream and I have to come back home and be stuck on this rock? Mm-hmm. And the answer to that is, he'll still be in space.
Yeah, exactly.
He'll still be in space. He'll still be able to do his dream. He'll still be where he feels like he belongs, where he calls home. And it's this kind of like merging of like, in the first chapter, he was in like with Nono. Nono was like, oh, space is great. This is my ocean. He's learned to appreciate space and love space. And he went almost the opposite direction where he starts hating Earth. He doesn't care about anybody else but space, this goal. And now he's kind of got this more holistic view, which is exactly what Yuri got. And I kind of love how Yuri was like, same thing with Thor's, where he's like, I don't know how to explain it, and I'm not smart enough to explain it, but this is what I felt. And then we get like almost a recontextualization of that same theme again. And initially I was like, why are we doing this again? But I'm glad we've got it now. And maybe you've got more. Sorry, I just spoke a ton there.
No, it's good. I'm definitely curious too how retreading Yuri's realization is effective and what the kind of difference is. I mean, I do like the fact that, like, you know, this is like Hachi has to learn it himself. Mm-hmm. But like, why even have Yuri then? And I think a lot of it is that the way Yukimura writes, I think he likes to know exactly what he's writing about from the beginning and have, from the beginning, like, tell the reader the kind of core themes we're going to be grappling with. And, like, the kind of main thesis is stated from the beginning. I almost feel like Yuri's a way of doing that to give context to these ideas so you can kind of root for Hachi to reach it. That's kind of the way I looked at it. But I do think it's incredibly interesting that Hachi is there now, despite the fact that we haven't even gone on the mission yet. So it just makes me wonder what's going to come next, you know?
Very interesting.
Because we have, let's see, we have Yuri, Fi, and oh my God, Tanabe waiting for the train, right? And they're going back up to do the debris collecting work. That like they're going back, and Hachi's been accepted on the mission. He's going to Jupiter, you know, and he's now come to this realization. He's a changed man, but this moment here where they're getting on the train and they see Hachi, and Hachi's looking at them on the train. He can't get on with them. And I feel really sad for him, you know, because it almost feels like he's come to a realization too late. That was the vibe I got.
Interesting.
Where, like, he's just kind of looking at them, and they're like, they don't really know what he just went through today.
Yeah.
Or, well, during this time. So they're just kind of looking at him, and he, I think, has a realization. And I like that he says, see you later. It completely goes against what he was saying to Tanabe and Fi at the beginning of this volume.
Yes, I'm glad. I was about to say, yeah.
Where he was saying, like, the DS-12 is going to be a distant memory, but it's like...
Yeah.
And getting insulted that Fi would insinuate he'd be back. But he's like, no, I will see you later.
Yeah, I will see you later. Yeah. The only issue with this little bit is that I think they got the date wrong again. We went back a year into... So it was... When Tanabe joins us at the very beginning of 2076. Now we're in 2075. So I got really confused there. I wasn't sure this is like when Tanabe was... I think I just don't care about the dates at this point. I think dates have been inaccurate twice. So I think it's meant to be 2076 instead. I even looked online for... I got like, there was like this PDF. The only thing I found was a PDF of the timeline. And even on that, it like, like it was all in like chronological order, and then it
Yeah.
went back in time one year for 75, and you're like, wow, what? I don't know what happened. And so even like this guy was like, it was like a proper PDF. It almost looked like a paper of some sort how he wrote it. So
Yeah.
anyway, but yeah, fantastic. I mean, I'm not sure if you have any extra thoughts, but this is, I mean, another fantastic set, a bunch of chapters. I really think you expanded upon it better. You know, we've given fair criticism, but overall,
Yeah,
I don't think
for
anybody
sure.
should take away that Plan Test is bad or not worth your time. It definitely is. If you want to
Absolutely.
read it, though, definitely buy the books. Do not
Buy
read it
the books.
online. Buy the books.
Absolutely.
Not because, I mean, I understand they're probably expensive. On the back here says it's, $25. That's not cheap, but hey, they're big, thick books. You only got two to buy, so that's maximum $50. It's probably cheaper now. You can get off Amazon really cheap if you can't find it in your local store. So definitely do so. Two books, and you got a really complete manga that seems to have a lot of really good stuff in. And I'll definitely be looking at it for some of my art going forward, because I've taken part in a few Vinland Saga things, like this Christmas challenge or whatever, Secret Santa, and I've got to draw something, and definitely taking some inspiration from this. So, yeah.
I know
made-
a good amount of people in our Vinland Saga circle are also
Yeah.
fans of Planet S. So maybe if you get lucky, you can get a fan.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
draw
for
for.
sure. For sure.
Yeah, I guess I don't have any more specific thoughts about this chapter. We really covered everything I wanted to talk about. I'm sure after we're done recording, things are going to come to my head. But yeah, I think this volume was just a really strong showing that I'm definitely was curious where things are going to go next after the last volume. But this time it's been very hard to not read the next chapter, because I really want to know how is Hachi going to be challenged and have to continue growing after this, because it almost feels like this volume introduced Hachi's problem and then by the end kind of solved it. So what's going to be his problem going forward, and what does he still have to learn, because he still clearly has a lot to learn and may not even fully understand a lot of this himself yet. But do you have any ideas for what Hachi's kind of conflict will be going forward?
No, I don't think it'll be as much of an internal conflict as him actually more of a plot now, trying to fight against the world and fight against corruption, and with the Jupiter project, and him having a new mindset and how that clashes with someone like Locksmith. That's pretty well, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you're thinking kind of like this was his turning point, and now he's kind of going to have to live with it, I guess. Kind of like, Vinland Saga, Thorfinn has his kind of rebirth. Like, this was Hachi's rebirth, and now he's going to have to approach this same narrative that he was already in with a different perspective.
For sure.
That's interesting. I have no idea what's going to happen, because I definitely felt like a sort of bad feeling about the last little scene there where they got on the train he can't follow, where he's come to this realization of how important they are to him, but he can't go with them just yet, and he says, well, off to Jupiter. So he's kind of I have a feeling he still has more to learn, but I was just surprised how much was solved by this volume.
Yeah.
But I really do hope we get more time of seeing Yuri, Fee, and Tanabe. I hope they're not just kind of characters we're going to check in on at the end after the mission's done.
Yeah.
I would have really liked for them to,
I think they
for
are.
some reason, have to go on the mission.
Yeah, I'd like that a lot. I definitely think Tanabe will be there, right? 'Cause she's on that volume cover.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going to even
Though we do
happen
have
in
new
that
characters. Looking at the next, just flicking into the next page, we can see a new female character. She's got a lip ring, which doesn't look correct. That's not how lip rings are worn, I don't think. Just flip to the next page and tell me if I'm being stupid.
Oh yeah, well these are very different characters. Let's see. It is a bit low. It's definitely a bit low.
Like, anyway, that's fine.
Yeah, let's not.
It's a cool sense of style. I'm already complaining about the next chapter. All right.
But yeah, solid volume. I think, again, like I said at the beginning, I feel like this volume is, it had me a lot more invested than last volume. Last volume, I had me like really into it from the start, and then kind of had some moments that weren't as intriguing to me. And this volume, the whole way through, was just, I think, brilliant. And I think we got to see a lot more of Yukimura here, and like his kind of DNA in this volume.
For sure.
Cool. All right. Do you have any other closing thoughts?
I do not.
Then, but yeah, before we go, then, very recently, I think we actually talked about it a little bit in the last video. We talked about that it would be coming out, but me and Jarkey Bacon were in a video project together, the Vinland Saga quiz. If you haven't seen that yet, absolutely check it out. Jarkey Bacon put his heart and soul into that video, and it is so funny. And definitely please check it out if you haven't already. And yeah, I mean,
if you can make it through this 3 hour
yeah, if
video,
you made it to here, you can watch that video.
You can definitely watch the other one. You got plenty of time on your hands, my friend. But yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, so it's just a test your knowledge on Vinland Saga. There's lots of different aspects of Vinland Saga. It's manga knowledge, anime knowledge, external knowledge of like who is the composer or whatever, stuff like that. But then also some other rounds, which is more just like not just trivia, but also skills of like quick thinking and stuff like that. So it's a good mix of stuff, and yeah, I mean, it seemed to, everybody seems to really like it. I mean, the overpouring of just people really enjoying it was pretty overwhelming, and I really enjoyed seeing everybody's positive reactions towards it. I don't think I've really had any negative opinions towards it, which is surprising. I thought it was going to be a dumpster's fire, and I was really unsure when I posted it, because anyway, I was on a bit of a time crunch, but it seemed to work out well in the end, which I'm very happy with. But yeah, no, thanks for giving a shout out to that. It was a good time.
Yeah, of course. Congratulations on finally getting it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's gonna.
And, go for one more thing. I'm like 10 subscribers away from getting to 1K subs. Okay, and it was my goal.
Subscribe to Jarkey Bacon.
Yeah, it was my goal at the beginning of this year to get to 1K, and we're not there yet. So I could pump out a video quickly, but I'm very busy at the moment. So feel free to subscribe. It doesn't really matter that much, but it'll be. I mean, don't feel obligated to, but I just thought I'd point that out there as a funny gag.
Yeah, I mean, if you watched this long, I'd hope you're willing to subscribe.
They're probably already subscribed to both of us if they're watching this.
Yeah, at that point. But yeah, all right. Yeah, no, thank you everybody who has watched this long. I was pretty happy with how the last video went. The views grew a lot more than I really expected them to. I thought it would get less traction than my usual Vinland stuff, but it was surprisingly a lot more. So thank you everybody who checked that out and who's continuing to check that out at this point. You can see the difference in like when the last one was released and now. We're gonna try to do this once a month, so around the middle of the month I could make this video a Planet S video, and then at the end of the month Vinland Saga review. That's the schedule we're gonna go with. So yeah, next month we're going to be getting into the second omnibus volume. There's one more chapter in the volume 1 of the omnibus, but we're going to be going into volume 3 of the Japanese volumes. Yeah, so yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, until then, thank you everybody, and thank you Jarkey Bacon for joining me.
No, it was my pleasure, All
right, then yeah, that's going to do it. See you guys.
Bye.